It is 3 in the morning. The world outside your window is dark and silent and still, but inside a storm is raging. Your body is tired, craving rest, but your mind refuses to surrender. It replays the conversations from the day, dissects every word, every glance. It leaps ahead to the deadlines of tomorrow, the bills that need to be paid, the uncertain future that looms like a shadow in the corner of the room. This is a prison without bars, a silent struggle known to so many in our modern world. We are living in an age of incredible connection, yet we feel more disconnected than ever. We are surrounded by endless information, yet starved for true wisdom. We are told to hustle, to climb, to achieve, to acquire. We run on a relentless treadmill, chasing a fleeting sense of peace that we believe lies in the next promotion, the next vacation, the next purchase, the next notification of approval on our screens. We seek solace in noise, in distraction, in anything that can momentarily drown out the restless hum of our own minds. But the quiet always returns, and when it does, the anxiety, the emptiness, and the exhaustion are still there, waiting for us in the dark. What if the solution isn't to run faster? What if it isn't to add more, but to understand what is already here? What if peace is not a destination to be reached, but a way of traveling? There is an ancient path, a timeless science of the mind that offers not an escape from life, but a way to live more fully within it. It doesn't ask you to believe in anything, only to look, to observe, to become a gentle scientist of your own experience. This path is the wisdom of Buddhism, not as a rigid religion, but as a practical set of tools, a clear mirror that can help us see the workings of our own hearts and minds. It is a guide to untangling the knots of suffering we unknowingly tie ourselves. It is an invitation to come home to the present moment, to find the stillness that exists not in the absence of the storm, but right in the eye of it. This journey is about discovering that the peace you have been seeking in the outside world has been within you all along, waiting patiently to be uncovered. Our journey begins not with a complex philosophical idea, but with something you are already doing, something you have done every moment of every day since the moment you were born. It is the most intimate and constant companion you will ever know. It is your breath. But before we turn our attention to it, we must first understand why we need to. We must first meet the inhabitant of our mind, the one who keeps us from peace, the one often called the monkey mind. Imagine a wild monkey, restless and agitated, trapped inside a room. It cannot stay still. It leaps from the window to the table, screeches, throws things, swings from the rafters, never pausing, never at rest. This is the state of our untrained mind. It leaps from a memory of something that happened 20 years ago to a worry about a meeting next week. It swings from a rehearsed argument with someone in your past to a fantasy about a future triumph. It chatters endlessly, a constant inner monologue of judgment, commentary, planning, and regret. We think we are in control of this monkey, but most of the time, it is dragging us along on its chaotic journey through time. While our bodies are sitting in a chair, drinking a cup of tea, our minds are 1,000 miles and 12 years away. We are not living our lives, we are thinking them. We are absent from the one and only moment that is ever real, the present moment. This constant mental travel is utterly exhausting. When the mind dwells in the past, it is often a landscape of ghosts. We walk through the museum of our own regrets, polishing old hurts, rereading the scripts of conversations we wish had gone differently, or we cling to fading photographs of happy moments, creating a painful contrast with our current reality. The past is a land of if-onlys and what-ifs, a place where we can change nothing, yet expend enormous energy reliving and resisting what has already gone. When the mind leaps into the future, it enters a realm of pure fiction. It constructs elaborate scenarios of disaster and failure, causing our bodies to react with real stress, a real cascade of anxious hormones for something that has not happened and may never happen. Or it creates fantasies of a perfect future, a time when all our problems will be solved, a destination we must strive and struggle to reach. This makes the present moment feel inadequate, a mere obstacle to be overcome on the way to that imaginary paradise. In both states, dwelling in the past, or projecting into the future, we are abandoning the field of life itself. The taste of our food, the warmth of the sun on our skin, the sound of a loved one's voice, all of this is happening now. But if the monkey mind is elsewhere, we miss it all. We live our lives as ghosts in our own homes, sleepwalkers dreaming of other times, while the rich, vibrant, and simple reality of the now passes by, unnoticed and unlived. So how do we gently coax this monkey to be still? How do we come home to the present moment? We do not fight the monkey. We do not try to cage it or silence it with force. This only makes it more agitated. Instead, we give it a simple, pleasant task. We give it a post to hold on to. That post is the breath. The breath has a magical quality. Unlike your thoughts, your memories, or your plans, your breath is always, unequivocally, in the present. You cannot take a breath that is in the past. You cannot inhale in the future. The feeling of air entering your nostrils, filling your lungs, and then leaving your body is an event that is happening right now. It is a physical, tangible, undeniable reality. It is the rhythm of life itself, playing out within your own body. It is your anchor in the stormy sea of thought. No matter how far the winds of anxiety or regret have blown you, this anchor is always available to be dropped. It is always here, waiting. It costs nothing. It requires no special equipment. It is the most democratic and accessible tool for peace that exists. When you feel lost in the labyrinth of your own mind, the breath is the thread that can lead you back out into the open air of the present moment. Returning your attention to the simple, physical sensation of breathing is an act of profound homecoming. It is a declaration that says, I will not be a slave to my thoughts anymore. I choose to be here, now, in this moment, in this body, with this breath. Let us try, just for a moment, to become acquainted with this anchor. You do not need to sit in a special posture or close your eyes unless you feel comfortable doing so. This can be done anywhere. Simply bring your awareness gently to the fact that you are breathing. Your only job is to be a witness. You are not the breather. You are the one watching the breathing happen. Let the breath breathe itself. It knows what to do. It has been doing it your whole life. Just notice it. You might notice the sensation of the air as it passes the tip of your nostrils, a little cooler on the in-breath, a little warmer on the out-breath. Or you might prefer to rest your attention on your abdomen, feeling the gentle rise as you inhale and the gentle fall as you exhale. There is no right or wrong way. Simply choose one spot and let your attention rest there as lightly as a butterfly on a flower. Now, what will happen? Inevitably, the monkey mind will reappear. After a few seconds, you will find your mind has wandered off. It might be thinking about this very guidance, or what you need to do later, or a sound you just heard. This is not a failure. It is simply what minds do. The practice is not about preventing the mind from wandering. The practice is about what you do when you notice it has wandered. When you realize you are lost in thought, the instruction is simple. First, gently acknowledge where you have been. Thinking. Then, without any judgment, without any frustration, as gently and kindly as you would guide a lost child back home, you escort your attention back to the breath. This is the core of the practice. Every time you return to the breath, you are strengthening a muscle of mindfulness. You are casting a vote for the present moment. You are weakening the habit of being lost in thought and strengthening the habit of being present. You may have to do this 100 times in 5 minutes. That does not mean you are doing it poorly. It means you are having 100 opportunities to practice. There is a subtle but profound difference between thinking about the breath and truly feeling the breath. Thinking about the breath is an intellectual activity. It is the mind's commentary. Okay, I am breathing in now. That was a deep breath. The next one should be slower. Am I doing this right? This is still the monkey mind, just with a new toy. Feeling the breath, on the other hand, is a direct sensory experience. It is nonverbal. It is the raw data of sensation before the mind has labeled it. It is the simple, pure feeling of expansion in the chest, the coolness in the nose, the gentle deflation of the belly. To move from thinking to feeling is to move from the noisy headquarters of the ego to the quiet, vast field of direct awareness. This is where peace is found. So, as you rest your attention on the breath, see if you can let go of the commentary and just be with the raw sensation. Feel it, don't analyze it. There is a story of a group of monks who went into a deep forest to meditate. As night fell, they began to hear strange sounds and see frightening shapes in the shadows. They became terrified, believing they were being haunted by spirits. They ran back to the Buddha and told him of their fear. The Buddha did not give them a magic spell or a protective charm. He gave them a weapon. He taught them the practice of mindfulness, of breathing. He told them, return to the forest. But this time, do not get lost in your fear. Stay with your breath. The in-breath and the out-breath will be your refuge, your home. When you are anchored in your breath, no fear can overwhelm you. The monks did as he said. They returned to the dark forest, and whenever fear arose, they gently guided their attention back to the simple, steady rhythm of their breathing. They discovered that the breath was a safe island in the middle of their fear. The fear was still there, like the dark forest, but it no longer had the power to consume them because they were no longer lost in it. They were home. This is the power you are cultivating with every conscious breath. You are learning to find your safe island, your refuge, right in the center of your own being. Having found this anchor, this thread of the present moment, we are now better equipped to observe the very waves of thought and feeling that used to pull us under. We can now begin to look at them, not from within the storm, but from the shore of our own quiet breathing. Having found the breath as our anchor, our safe harbor in the present moment, we can now turn our gaze with courage and curiosity toward the very currents that once tossed us about. We can begin to look at the ceaseless flow of the mind itself. Imagine yourself sitting on the bank of a great wide river. The water flows constantly, never the same for 2 moments. Sometimes the current is slow, gentle, and clear. At other times it is a raging, muddy torrent filled with debris and churning with power. This river is your mind, and the water, the debris, the currents are your thoughts. For most of our lives, we are not sitting on the bank. We are thrashing about in the middle of the river, completely identified with its every movement. When the current of anger flows, we become anger. When the current of sadness pulls, we become sadness. When a log of worry bumps into us, we cling to it and are carried downstream into a sea of anxiety. We believe we are the river. We have never known anything else. The practice of mindfulness, the next step on our journey, is about learning to gently pull ourselves out of the water, to take a seat on the green grass of the riverbank, and to simply watch the river flow by. It's about realizing in the very core of our being that we are the watcher on the bank, not the river itself. This is perhaps the most profound and liberating secret of the inner life. You are not your thoughts. Let that sink in. You, the conscious being who is hearing these words right now, are not the voice in your head. You are the one who is aware of the voice in your head. For our entire lives, we have made a fundamental error of identification. We have mistaken the chattering commentator for the owner of the house. We have assumed that the endless stream of judgments, opinions, worries, and memories that parades through our awareness is the very essence of who we are. If the mind produces a thought like, I am not good enough, we accept it as a factual statement about our identity. If it produces a thought of anxiety, something terrible is going to happen, we treat it as a prophetic vision. We fuse with these thoughts. We allow them to define our reality, to dictate our emotions, and to drive our actions. This fusion, this mistaken identity, is the source of immeasurable suffering. To awaken from this trance is to begin the process of liberation. It starts with creating a space between the observer and the observed. It starts with the recognition that you are the silent, spacious awareness in which the thoughts appear, just as the sky is the vast open space in which clouds drift by. What then are thoughts if they are not you? They are simply mental events. They are transient, fleeting phenomena that arise and pass away in the field of your consciousness. They are nothing more than a combination of words, images, and sensations. Think of them as clouds. Some are dark and heavy, pregnant with the rain of sadness or fear. Others are light, white, and wispy, barely there at all. Some move quickly, driven by the winds of agitation, while others drift by with lazy slowness. As the observer, your job is not to be a cloud controller. It is not to try and force the dark clouds away or to desperately cling to the white ones. This is a futile and exhausting battle. The weather of the mind is not ultimately under your control. Your task is much simpler and much more profound. It is to be the sky. The sky does not fight the clouds. It does not judge them. It simply allows them to be what they are, to come and to go as they please. And most importantly, the sky is never stained or harmed by even the darkest and most violent storm cloud. Once the cloud is past, the sky is still the same vast blue and peaceful expanse it always was. This is your true nature. Your awareness is the sky. Your thoughts are just the weather. By seeing them as such, you take away their power. A thought of fear is just a thought, a dark cloud. It is not you, and it is not a prophecy. A thought of self-criticism is just a thought, a gray cloud. It is not a final judgment. It is just weather passing through. To cultivate this perspective, to move from being lost in the river to watching from the bank, we can use a simple yet powerful technique. It is the practice of gently labeling our thoughts. As you sit, anchored by your breath, you will notice a thought inevitably hooking your attention and pulling you away. The moment you recognize this, instead of scolding yourself, you can simply, softly, make a mental note of the thought's category. If you find yourself rehearsing what you'll say in a meeting tomorrow, you can label it planning. If an image from your childhood appears, you can note remembering. If you start to worry about your health, you can label it worrying. If you start judging your meditation practice, you can note judging. The label should be soft, gentle, and non-judgmental. It is a tool of mindfulness, not a hammer of criticism. This practice is revolutionary for two reasons. First, it immediately breaks the spell of the story. The moment you label a thought as worrying, you are no longer lost inside the narrative of the worry. You have stepped outside of it and are looking at it. You have become the observer. Second, it reinforces your identity as the spacious awareness in which the thought is happening. You are the one doing the labeling. This simple act creates a pocket of air, a space of freedom between you and the thought. The thought is no longer a part of you, it's an object you can observe. And in that space lies peace. In that space lies freedom of choice. You are no longer compelled to believe every thought or to act on every impulse that arises in the mind. You can see it, label it, and let it float on by, like a leaf on the river's surface. There is a timeless Taoist parable that perfectly illustrates this shift in perspective. A man was enjoying a quiet boat ride on a misty morning. As he drifted, another boat suddenly emerged from the fog and bumped hard into the side of his. The man's peaceful mood instantly vanished. He was filled with rage. He stood up and began to shout at the person in the other boat. "What is wrong with you? Watch where you are going." But as he peered more closely through the mist, he realized with a jolt that the other boat was empty. It had simply come untied from its mooring and was drifting aimlessly with the current. In that instant, all of his anger evaporated. It was impossible to be angry at an empty boat. He simply pushed it away and continued on his journey. Our thoughts are like that empty boat. When a painful or anxious thought arises and bumps into our consciousness, our immediate reaction is to believe there is someone piloting it. We believe the thought has intention, that it is real, that it is directed at us. We think the self-critical thought is a wise judge delivering a verdict. We think the anxious thought is a skilled navigator warning us of real icebergs ahead. And so we get angry, we get scared, we suffer, we yell at the boat. But the practice of mindfulness, of watching from the riverbank, allows us to look more closely through the mist. And when we do, we make a startling discovery. The boat is empty. The thought is just a thought. It is an impersonal, conditioned, neurological event that has come unmoored and is drifting on the currents of the mind. It has no pilot, it has no malicious intent. It is just empty. When you truly see this, how can you be angry at it? How can you be terrified by it? You can't. You simply notice it. Perhaps you give it a gentle nudge, and you let it drift on by. All the suffering, the anger, the fear comes from the assumption that the boat is occupied. The moment we realize it's empty is the moment we are set free. This practice of disidentification, of seeing our thoughts as empty boats, is a profound act of kindness to ourselves. It allows us to rest on the peaceful banks of awareness, watching the river of mind flow by, no longer drowning in its currents, but simply witnessing its transient and mysterious beauty. And from this stable ground, we can now examine with even greater clarity the mechanism that creates the painful reaction in the first place. We can look at the first bump from the boat, and then, more importantly, at the second story we tell ourselves about it. Having taken a seat on the quiet banks of our own awareness, watching the river of thought flow by, we begin to notice something crucial. We see the different currents, the different logs and leaves that drift past. We see thoughts of planning, thoughts of memory, thoughts of joy. But we also notice the painful currents, the sharp and jagged rocks that cause us to flinch. This brings us to a teaching at the very heart of the Buddhist path to freedom, a teaching of profound practical wisdom that helps us understand the anatomy of our own pain. It is the parable of the second arrow. The Buddha taught that in life, we cannot always avoid the first arrow, but the second arrow, the one that causes the deepest and most lasting wound, is one that we shoot at ourselves. Understanding the difference between these two arrows is the key to transforming our relationship with the inevitable hardships of life. It is the difference between pain, which is unavoidable, and suffering, which is optional. Let us first speak of the first arrow. This is the raw, unavoidable pain of human existence. It is the headache that throbs in your temples. It is the sharp sting of criticism from a person you respect. It is the physical pain of a stubbed toe or a chronic illness. It is the ache of loss when a relationship ends or a loved one departs. It is the pang of disappointment when a project you poured your heart into fails to succeed. It is the cold feeling of rejection when you are not chosen. These are the first arrows. They are facts of life. They are an intrinsic part of the fabric of our world, like gravity or the changing of the seasons. No amount of wisdom, wealth, or virtue can build a fortress that is completely impervious to these arrows. The Buddha himself, an awakened being, experienced physical pain and the challenges of a human body. The first arrow strikes everyone, the wise and the unwise, the good and the bad. To live is to be vulnerable to them. They are the price of admission for this precious human life. When the first arrow strikes, there is a simple, clean, and direct experience of pain. It is a physical sensation or a direct emotional impact. It arrives, it is felt, and, if left alone, it would eventually pass. But this is rarely what happens. For the person untrained in mindfulness, the moment the first arrow strikes, something else occurs almost automatically. We reach back into our own quiver, take aim, and fire a second arrow directly into the same wound. What is this second arrow? It is our reaction to the first. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. It is the mental proliferation, the storm of thought and emotion that we generate in response to the initial event. The first arrow was the headache. The second arrow is the thought, this is a disaster. My whole day is ruined. I'll never get my work done. Why does this always happen to me when I have so much to do? The first arrow was the critical email. The second arrow is the obsessive replaying of that email for hours, the shame that burns in our chest, the anger we rehearse in our minds, the story we spin about our own incompetence or our boss's cruelty. The first arrow was the feeling of rejection. The second arrow is the conclusion, I am unlovable. No one will ever want me. There is something fundamentally wrong with me. This second arrow is made of many things. It is made of blame, directed either outward at others or inward at ourselves. It is made of catastrophizing, taking a single painful event and spinning it into a narrative of total and permanent disaster. It is made of self-pity, the poor me story, that casts us as the perpetual victim in the drama of life. It is made of fear, the anxious projection of this one moment of pain onto the entire future. It is this second arrow, not the first, that is the true source of our most prolonged and agonizing suffering. The initial pain of the first arrow might be like a quick, sharp cut, but the second arrow is like rubbing salt, dirt, and poison into the wound day after day. It is what prevents the wound from healing. It is what transforms a momentary pain into a chronic state of suffering. We walk around with these self-inflicted wounds, keeping them fresh with our own thoughts, wondering why we are in such constant misery, never realizing that we are holding the bow in our own hands. Let's examine this process more closely. Imagine you receive that critical email. The first arrow is the immediate emotional sting, a tightening in the chest, a flush of heat in the face. This might last only for a few moments. But then, the second arrow factory of the mind begins production. You think, he thinks I'm an idiot. That thought creates a feeling of shame. The feeling of shame then fuels another thought, I probably am an idiot. I remember that other mistake I made last year. This thought deepens the shame and adds a layer of anxiety. This anxiety then triggers another thought, I'm going to get fired. This creates a feeling of panic. Within minutes, a single, momentary event, a first arrow, has been magnified by a volley of second arrows into a full-blown crisis of identity and security. You are no longer experiencing the simple sting of criticism. You are now drowning in a sea of suffering created entirely by your own mind. This is the feedback loop of suffering. A negative thought creates a painful emotion, which in turn gives rise to more negative thoughts. We get caught in this vortex, this downward spiral, and we forget what the original event even was. All we know is the suffering. This is why a simple comment can ruin an entire day. It is why a small failure can lead to weeks of depression. It is not the power of the first arrow that does this to us. It is the terrible, destructive power of the second. So what can we do? The path to peace is not about becoming a superhuman who can dodge all the first arrows. That is impossible. The path is about learning to lay down our own bow. It is about choosing consciously not to shoot the second arrow. This is where the practice of mindfulness becomes our greatest ally. When a first arrow strikes, our training allows us to respond differently. The first step is to simply acknowledge the pain with clarity and without judgment. Instead of immediately launching into a story, we can pause. We can bring our awareness to the direct physical and emotional sensations of the first arrow. We can say to ourselves, this is pain. This is what rejection feels like in the body. There is a tightness here, a heat here. We meet the raw experience with a courageous and compassionate presence. Then we use our anchor. We return to the breath. We breathe into the painful sensation, not to make it go away, but simply to be with it, to create a space around it. This pause, this mindful gap, is our moment of power. It is in this space between the first arrow's impact and our habitual reaction that freedom is born. In this space, we can watch the mind as it instinctively reaches for the second arrow. We can see the thought of blame begin to form. We can feel the pull of self-pity. We can witness the impulse to catastrophize. But because we are watching from the riverbank, because we know that these are just empty boats, we don't have to climb aboard. We can see the second arrow for what it is, just another thought, another cloud passing in the sky of awareness. We can choose to let it go. We can choose not to shoot. This doesn't mean the pain of the first arrow vanishes instantly, but it means we are not adding fuel to the fire. We are allowing the wound to heal. We are treating ourselves with compassion rather than violence. This is a radical act of self-love. It is the recognition that we have suffered enough and that much of our suffering has been a tragic case of mistaken identity, a friendly fire incident in the battlefield of our own mind. Life will continue to send its first arrows. People will disappoint us, our bodies will ache, and our plans will go awry. But we can learn to meet this unavoidable pain with a courageous heart and a quiet mind. We can learn to feel the sting, take a breath, and let it be, without adding the poison of a second arrow. Our peace is not found in a life without pain, but in our ability to refrain from creating our own suffering. As we become more skilled at not shooting the second arrow, a natural question arises. Why is our impulse to shoot it so strong? Why do we react so violently to pain and change? The answer lies in our desperate clinging to the illusion that things should be permanent and predictable in a world that is defined by the very opposite. This leads us to the next great truth, the profound and liberating wisdom of impermanence. We have seen how our suffering is often not caused by an event itself, but by the second arrow we shoot into our own hearts, the painful story we tell ourselves about what has happened. But this raises a deeper question. Why is our impulse to shoot that second arrow so powerful? Why do we react with such fear, anger, and despair when life doesn't go our way? The answer lies in a fundamental conflict, a war that most of us are waging every single day without even realizing it. It is the war between our deepest desire and the deepest law of the universe. Our desire is for permanence, for security, for things to be solid, stable, and predictable. The deepest law of the universe is that everything, without exception, is impermanent. In the language of the Buddha, this law is called anicca. Anicca is not a belief system. It is a direct observation of reality, as fundamental as the law of gravity. It simply states that everything is in a constant state of flux. To resist this law is to resist the very nature of existence, and it is in this resistance that the roots of our suffering are found. Let us take a quiet tour of this universal law and see it operating in every corner of our lives. Begin with your own body. You may think of your body as a solid, continuous entity, the same you that existed yesterday. But in reality, it is a flowing river of processes. Millions of cells are dying and being born in this very moment. The air you are breathing in becomes part of you, and the air you breathe out carries a part of you away. The food you eat is transformed into energy, skin, and bone. The body you have today is not the same physical object it was 10 years ago, or even 1 year ago. It is a process, not a thing. It is a manifestation of anicca, constantly changing, aging, and moving toward its inevitable dissolution. We fight this reality with all our might, clinging to youth, fearing illness, and denying the reality of aging. This fight against the natural flow of our own biology is a source of immense anxiety and suffering. Now, turn your awareness to your mind, to your feelings and emotions. Where is the permanence there? One moment you feel a surge of joy, a warmth and lightness in your chest. It feels wonderful, and the mind immediately thinks, I want this to last forever, but it cannot. A few hours, or perhaps even a few minutes later, that feeling has faded, replaced by a neutral state, or perhaps a feeling of boredom or irritation. Then, a wave of sadness might arise, triggered by a memory or a passing thought. It feels heavy and dark, and the mind immediately thinks, I hate this. I need to get rid of it. But this too shall pass. No emotion is a permanent resident. They are all temporary visitors, arriving at your door, staying for a while, and then departing. Our mistake and our suffering comes from trying to lock the pleasant visitors in and barricade the door against the unpleasant ones. We exhaust ourselves in this futile effort, forgetting that the nature of all visitors is to eventually leave. The wise host does not cling or resist, but greets each visitor with awareness, offers them a cup of tea, and allows them to depart when their time is up. The same is true for our thoughts. As we discovered when watching The River of Mind, thoughts are the most fleeting and ephemeral of all phenomena. They bubble up from nowhere, a string of words or an image, and vanish just as quickly. Yet we grant them such power. We grasp onto a single anxious thought and build an entire identity around it, forgetting that 1,000 different, contradictory thoughts will pass through that same mind today. And what of the world outside of us? Are our relationships permanent? People grow and change. The friend you were closest to a decade ago may now be a distant memory. The dynamics within your family shift and evolve. Are our possessions permanent? The new car becomes old. The fashionable clothes go out of style. The house we cherish will one day belong to someone else or turn to dust. Our careers, our social status, our environment, All of it is subject to the relentless, non-negotiable law of change. The entire universe, from the life of a star to the life of a mayfly, is a grand, cosmic dance of arising and passing away. Nothing is static. Nothing is exempt. To see this reality clearly can, at first, feel frightening. It seems to pull the rug out from under everything we hold dear. But this initial fear comes from our misunderstanding. We believe that permanence is the source of our security and happiness. The profound insight of Buddhism is that the opposite is true. Our clinging to the illusion of permanence is the very source of our suffering. The suffering is not in the fact that things change. The suffering is in our resistance to that fact. Imagine you are standing in a powerful river. If you try to stand perfectly still, bracing yourself against the current, you will be battered and exhausted. You will feel the full force of the river as a hostile, violent power. This is the experience of resisting anicca. But if you relax, if you let go, and allow the current to carry you, the struggle ceases. You become one with the flow. You can use the river's own energy to navigate. This is the experience of accepting anicca. Peace is found not in stopping the river, but in learning to swim. When we truly begin to understand this, a remarkable shift occurs. We see that anicca is not a bleak or nihilistic doctrine, but a source of incredible beauty, hope, and freedom. It is what makes life precious. Do we not cherish the beauty of a cherry blossom precisely because we know it will only last for a few days? Does the knowledge that our children will grow up not make their childhood moments infinitely more precious? Impermanence is what calls on us to pay attention, to be present, to savor the sweetness of this moment, because this moment will never come again. It infuses our lives with a sense of poignancy and wonder. Furthermore, anicca is the foundation of all hope. Because things are impermanent, it means that even the darkest night will pass. The most intense pain, the deepest grief, the most crippling anxiety is all subject to the law of change. It will not last forever. This is not wishful thinking. It is a law of nature. This understanding gives us the strength to endure difficult times, knowing that the storm will eventually break. And finally, embracing impermanence is an act of profound liberation. It allows us to open our clenched fists. We can let go of our rigid expectations of how life, other people, and we ourselves should be. We can stop fighting a war against reality that we can never win. We can relax and participate in the beautiful, messy, unpredictable dance of life as it truly is. There is a classic Zen story of an old farmer. One day, his only horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him, saying, "Oh, what terrible luck." The farmer simply replied, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A week later, the horse returned, and it brought with it a herd of wild horses. The neighbors came to celebrate, exclaiming, "Oh, what wonderful luck." The farmer replied, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors came to offer their sympathy. "What awful luck." The farmer said again, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A few weeks later, the army came through the village, conscripting all the able-bodied young men for a brutal war. The farmer's son, because of his broken leg, was the only one spared. This story perfectly captures the wisdom of anicca. We are so quick to label events as good or bad, creating second arrows of joy or despair based on a snapshot in time. But we cannot see the whole picture. Life unfolds in ways we cannot predict. What seems like a disaster today may be the seed of a blessing tomorrow. What seems like a triumph may lead to unforeseen challenges. The wise farmer does not cling to any single outcome. He accepts the flow of events with a calm, open heart, knowing that everything changes. Learning to embody this wisdom is learning to let go. It is learning to hold our lives, our relationships, our successes, and our failures with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. It is to appreciate them while they are here and to allow them to go when it is their time. This is not a passive resignation, but an active, intelligent, and deeply peaceful engagement with life as it is. When we stop fighting the current, we are free to truly live. And as we become more comfortable with the changing nature of everything around us and within our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts, very deep and unsettling question begins to surface. If all these things that I thought were me are constantly changing, constantly in flux, then who or what am I? If I am not my body, not my thoughts, not my emotions, what is this self that seems to be experiencing it all? This profound inquiry leads us directly to the next pillar of wisdom, the mystery of no, self or anatta. We have journeyed to the edge of a profound insight. We have sat on the riverbank and watched our thoughts flow by, realizing we are not the river. We have examined the sting of life's first arrows and seen how we wound ourselves with the second. We have stood in awe of the universal law of impermanence, anicca, understanding that everything we can perceive is in a constant state of flux. This relentless change applies to our bodies, our feelings, our world. And now, this path of inquiry leads us to the most intimate and perhaps the most challenging question of all. If everything is changing, what about the self? What is this I that seems to be the constant, the center of my universe, the one who is experiencing all this change? We instinctively feel like a solid, continuous being. I was me yesterday, I am me today, and I will be me tomorrow. This feeling of I-ness is the bedrock of our existence. And yet, the wisdom of the Buddha invites us to do something radical, to turn the light of our awareness around and search for this very self that we take for granted. This investigation into what is called anatta, or no self, is not an attempt to deny our existence, but to understand its true nature. It is the key that unlocks the door to the deepest freedom imaginable. Let us begin this investigation together. Like gentle detectives, looking for a mysterious entity, where is this self to be found? Let us look in the most obvious place, the body. Are you your body? It seems so at first, but which part of it are you? Are you your hand? If you were to lose a hand in an accident, would you be any less you? No, of course not. Are you your heart, your liver, your lungs? These are just organs, components working together. We've already seen that the entire body is a process, constantly changing, with cells dying and being born. A static, unchanging self cannot be found in a dynamic, ever-changing body. So, if we are not our body, perhaps we are our mind? Let's look there. Are you your feelings? One moment you are happy, the next you are sad, the next you are frustrated. If you were your feelings, your self would be flickering in and out of existence constantly, a chaotic and unstable entity. A permanent self cannot be found in impermanent feelings. Well then, are you your thoughts? This seems closer. The voice in the head often feels like the command center, but we have already seen that thoughts are like clouds passing in the sky. Are you the angry thought? The generous thought? The thought about needing to buy milk? If you are not the river, you cannot be any single drop of water within it. So, a self cannot be found in the fleeting stream of thoughts. What is left? Perhaps the self is the controller, the decision maker, the CEO of the whole operation. But when we look closely, even this is hard to find. A decision seems to arise based on a complex web of past conditioning, present circumstances, and bodily states, often before we are even consciously aware of it. We look and look, patiently and honestly, through every component of our beinger, body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness, and we cannot find a separate, solid, continuous I anywhere. What we find instead is a process. We discover that what we call the self is not a noun, but a verb. It is not a fixed thing, but an ongoing event. The Buddha described this event as a temporary coming together of 5 aspects, like a bundle of sticks tied together. There is the bundle of physical form, the body. There is the bundle of feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. There is the bundle of perceptions, how our senses interpret the world. There is the bundle of mental formations, which includes our thoughts, habits, biases, and intentions. And there is the bundle of consciousness, the basic awareness that illuminates the other 4. What we call I is simply the functioning of these 5 bundles together. There is no extra thing, no separate owner standing behind them. Think of a wave in the ocean. A wave is a real event. It has characteristics, a shape, a size, a speed, but a wave has no separate existence from the ocean. You cannot take the wave out of the water and put it on the sand. The moment it is separated from the ocean, it ceases to be a wave. It is simply a temporary form that the vastness of the water has taken. The self is exactly like that. It is a temporary wave that arises from the vast ocean of existence, a pattern of physical and mental energy. It is a process of selfing, a fleeting combination of form, feeling, and thought, not a solid, independent entity. There is a famous and beautiful story that illustrates this perfectly. Nearly 2,000 years ago, a Greek king in India named Milinda, who was a great philosophical debater, sought out a renowned Buddhist sage named Nagasena. The king asked the sage's name. Nagasena replied, "I am known as Nagasena, Your Majesty, but this is only a conventional designation, a name, a label. There is no permanent person to be found here." King Milinda was astonished and amused by this. He challenged the sage, saying, "If there is no person, then who is it that wears these robes and eats this food?" Nagasena remained calm and then asked the king, "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here today? Did you walk, or did you come in a chariot?" The king, proud of his royal transport, replied, "I came in a chariot." "Excellent," said Nagasena. "Then please, Your Majesty, describe this chariot to me. Is the chariot the wheels?" "No, reverend sir," said the king. "Is it the axle, the frame, the reins, the whip?" To each question the king replied, "Number." "Then is the chariot all of these parts put together?" asked Nagasena. "No, that is not the chariot either." "Then is the chariot something separate and outside of all these parts?" "No, reverend sir." At this point, Nagasena smiled and said, "Your Majesty, you have said yourself that the chariot is not the wheels, nor the axle, nor any of its parts, nor something outside of its parts. Where, then, is this chariot? Is it just a sound, a mere word?" The king was humbled and realized the brilliance of the teaching. Nagasena concluded, "Just as chariot is a convenient name we give to a collection of parts assembled in a particular way, so Nagasena is a convenient name for the collection of my body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. But if you search for an essential, permanent Nagasena within these parts, it cannot be found." Oh, at first this idea of no self anatta can sound terrifying. It feels like an annihilation, a denial of our very being. But this is a misunderstanding. Anatta is not a statement that you do not exist. It is a statement about the nature of your existence. You exist not as a separate, isolated marble, but as a dynamic, interconnected wave. And recognizing this is the beginning of the most profound liberation. Think of all the energy you spend every day defending this thing called me. We defend our opinions, our reputation, our sense of importance. We are hurt when our ego is bruised. We are anxious about how I will be perceived. We are angry when my desires are thwarted. This ego defense is the source of so much of our daily anxiety, conflict, and stress. But if we see, through our own investigation, that this self we are defending is more like a shifting cloud than a solid fortress, what is there left to defend? The need for defense falls away. We can become less reactive, less easily offended, more open, and more resilient. When someone criticizes you, it is no longer an attack on the core of your being, but simply a comment on a temporary collection of thoughts and actions. The sting is gone. Furthermore, this insight dissolves the illusion of separation that causes so much loneliness and alienation. If we are not solid, separate selves, but interconnected processes, then the division between me and you becomes transparent. We are all waves in the same ocean. Your joy is connected to my joy. Your suffering is connected to my suffering. This is not a sentimental idea, but a deep seeing of reality. Compassion arises not as a moral duty, but as a natural, logical response to this interconnectedness. Finally, seeing ourselves as a process frees us from the prison of the past. If there is no fixed, unchanging self, then you are not chained to the person you were yesterday. You are not defined by your past mistakes. Every moment is a new arising, a new wave forming. You have the radical freedom to change, to grow, and to let go. Realizing anatta is like putting down a heavy bag that you have been carrying on your back your entire life without ever knowing you were carrying it. That bag is the burden of me, my, and mine. When you put it down, your shoulders relax, your breath deepens, and you can finally walk through the world with a lightness and a freedom you never thought possible. Having now looked at these three fundamental characteristics of existence, that it is marked by impermanence, anicca, dissatisfaction, dukkha, and no self. Anatta, we have a clear diagnosis of our condition. We are now ready to examine the comprehensive map the Buddha provided, not just of the problem, but of the path to its solution. This is the timeless and practical framework known as the Four Noble Truths. We have journeyed inward, exploring the very fabric of our moment-to-moment experience. We have learned to anchor ourselves in the breath, to watch the river of our thoughts from a safe and quiet shore. We have uncovered the profound laws of impermanence, anicca, and the elusive process-like nature of the self, anatta. These insights are not mere philosophical curiosities. They are the diagnostic tools that allow us to understand our own condition with breathtaking clarity. Now we arrive at the very heart of the Buddha's teaching, the culmination of his own long search for freedom. It is the framework that arose from his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, a teaching so practical, so logical, and so complete that it has been a guide for millions of people for over 2.5 millennia. This is the teaching of the Four Noble Truths. Before we explore them, it is essential to discard a common misconception. To a mind unfamiliar with them, these truths can sound pessimistic or negative, focusing on suffering. But this is like saying a doctor is pessimistic for diagnosing an illness. In fact, a diagnosis is the most hopeful and compassionate act a doctor can perform because it is the first and most necessary step toward a cure. The Buddha is often called the Great Physician, and the Four Noble Truths can be understood precisely as a medical diagnosis for the human condition. They are not dogmas to be believed without question, but propositions to be investigated and verified in the laboratory of your own life. They are a map offered with compassion that shows us exactly where we are, how we got here, where we can go, and the precise path to take to get there. The framework is simple and elegant. The first truth identifies the symptom. There is a fundamental dissatisfaction or stress in life. The second truth identifies the cause of this symptom. It arises from a specific kind of craving and clinging. The third truth offers a prognosis. There is a cure, a state where this dissatisfaction completely ceases. And the fourth truth writes out the prescription, the practical, step-by-step path that leads to this cure. Let us now walk through this profound diagnosis together with an open mind and a courageous heart. The first noble truth is the truth of dukkha. The word dukkha is often translated from the original Pali language as suffering, but this single English word is far too narrow and grim to capture its full meaning. Dukkha is more like a pervasive dissatisfaction, a subtle stress, a fundamental sense of things being not quite right. It is the friction that arises when our desires rub up against the reality of an ever-changing world. To fully understand dukkha, we can look at it on three distinct levels. The first level is the most obvious. Dukkha as ordinary pain and suffering. This is the pain of the body sickness, injury, the aches of old age, and the finality of death. It is the pain of the mind grief when we lose someone we love, sadness, despair, frustration when things go wrong, anger, and anxiety. This is the first arrow we spoke of, the unavoidable hardships of life that are plain for all to see. No one is exempt from this form of dukkha. The second level is more subtle. It is the dukkha that arises from change, from impermanence. This is the suffering we experience even when things are good. Have you ever been in a moment of pure joy, a beautiful vacation, a wonderful celebration, and felt a tiny, nagging whisper in the back of your mind, a subtle sadness that this moment will have to end? That is the second form of dukkha, It is the stress of trying to hold on to pleasant experiences, knowing that they are as fleeting as mist. It is the anxiety that shadows our happiness, because the law of anicca dictates that it cannot last. Our relationships will change, our youth will fade, our moments of triumph will become memories. The very happiness we seek is laced with this subtle stress because of its impermanent nature. The third level is the deepest and most pervasive. It is called sankhara dukkha, or the dukkha of conditioned existence. This is the background hum of dissatisfaction that is present even when there is no obvious pain and no particular happiness to cling to. It is a fundamental lack of ease that comes from being a self in the world, a self that is a composite of constantly changing physical and mental components, a self that feels separate and vulnerable. It is the stress of having to maintain and defend this fragile sense of ego. It is the subtle, underlying tension that comes from our fundamental ignorance of the way things truly are, our ignorance of anicca and anatta. It is the friction of our very existence as a conditioned, limited being. This is the deep-seated restlessness that sends us searching for constant distraction, the feeling that something is missing even when life is, on the surface, perfectly fine. There is a powerful story that illustrates this first noble truth, not as a depressing statement, but as a gateway to profound compassion. A young woman named Kisa Gotami lived in the time of the Buddha. Her first and only child, a young toddler, fell ill and died. Consumed by an unbearable grief, she refused to accept his death. She picked up his small body and wandered from house to house, desperately begging everyone she met for a medicine that could bring her son back to life. Some people ignored her, some mocked her as a madwoman. Finally, a kind man, seeing her profound suffering, suggested she go and see the Buddha. She ran to him, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded for the magic medicine. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "I can help you, but first you must do one thing for me. Go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed from a house where no one has ever died." Oh, filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gotami rushed to the village. At the first house, she asked, "Can you spare me a mustard seed for the Buddha's medicine?" "Of course," the woman replied. "But tell me," Kisa Gotami asked, "has anyone in this house ever known death?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said, "do not remind me of my deepest sorrow. My beloved husband died just last year." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. One family had lost a parent, another had lost a sibling, another had lost a child just like her. House after house, she heard the stories of loss and grief. As the day wore on, her frantic personal quest for a magical cure began to transform. She realized that every single family she met shared in the same sorrow she felt. Her personal, isolating grief began to dissolve into a vast, universal understanding. Death was not a unique tragedy that had struck only her. It was a universal condition of life. She finally understood. There was no house free from death, and therefore no mustard seed that could fulfill the Buddha's task. With this profound realization, she returned to the Buddha, her heart no longer filled with frantic hope, but with a deep, quiet, and compassionate understanding. She had not found the medicine she thought she wanted, but she had found the truth. She had realized the first noble truth of dukkha, not as a theory, but as a shared human experience that connects us all. The second noble truth courageously addresses the cause. If dukkha is the symptom, what is the origin of the illness? The Buddha identified a single powerful source, tanha, a specific kind of craving or thirst. This isn't about simple desires, like the desire for a good meal or the desire to be a kinder person. Tanha is a deeper, more compulsive and desperate clinging. It is the insatiable thirst of the ego to be gratified, to be secure, to become more, and to avoid discomfort. This thirst, he taught, is the very fuel that feeds the fire of our suffering. We can understand tanha in three distinct flavors. The first is the craving for sense pleasures. This is the relentless pursuit of agreeable sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and physical sensations. It is the addiction to the next delicious meal, the next entertaining show, the next purchase, the next hit of pleasure. We believe that if we can just arrange our external world perfectly, surrounding ourselves with only pleasant experiences, we will find lasting happiness. But because of anicca, impermanence, no sensory pleasure can last. The taste of the food fades, the thrill of the new purchase wears off, and we are left thirsty again, restlessly seeking the next source of gratification. This endless, unfulfillable chase is a primary source of our dissatisfaction. The second flavor is the craving for being or for existence. This is a deeper and more subtle thirst. It is the craving of the ego to solidify itself, to become something more, to be important, to be seen, to leave a mark on the world. It is the desperate desire for our lives, our identities, and our stories to be permanent and significant. It is the ambition that is rooted in insecurity, the drive to prove our own worth. This craving for being is a direct rebellion against the truth of anatta, no self. We try to build a solid, magnificent statue of me, while reality shows us that we are a flowing, ever-changing river. The friction between this craving and reality is a profound source of anxiety, striving, and eventual disappointment. The third flavor is the craving for non-existence, or annihilation. This is the flip side of the coin. It is our aversion, our desperate desire to get rid of unpleasant experiences. It is the craving for a headache to stop, for an annoying person to go away, for our own feelings of shame, fear, or boredom to cease to exist. When we are angry, we want to annihilate the object of our anger. When we are anxious, we want to annihilate the feeling of anxiety. This forceful pushing away, this aversion, creates immense tension and suffering. It is a declaration of war on our own present moment experience. It is the engine of the second arrow. We are shot with the first arrow of an unpleasant feeling, and our craving for it not to be there causes us to shoot ourselves again and again with resistance, hatred, and fear. And what is the root of all this craving in all its forms? The Buddha taught that the ultimate root is ignorance, or avijja. It is a fundamental misperception of reality. Because we are ignorant of the truth of anicca, we cling to fleeting pleasures as if they could be permanent. Because we are ignorant of the truth of anatta, we crave for the enhancement of a solid self that doesn't actually exist. And because we are ignorant of the truth of dukkha itself, we keep seeking lasting satisfaction in conditioned things that, by their very nature, can never fully satisfy us. This craving, born of ignorance, is the direct cause of our suffering. This brings us to the third noble truth, the truth of cessation, or nirodha. This is the prognosis, and it is the most wonderfully hopeful message in all of spiritual life. It is the simple and radical statement that a cure is possible. There is an end to suffering. The fire of craving, greed, and hatred can be completely extinguished. This is not a vague hope for a better afterlife. It is a state that can be realized right here in this very life. This state of the complete cessation of suffering and its causes is called nibbana, or nirvana. The word literally means to extinguish or to blow out as one blows out a candle flame. What is extinguished is the fire of greed, hatred, and delusion. When the fuel of tanha is no longer supplied, the fire of dukkha goes out. Nibbana is often misunderstood as a state of nothingness or annihilation. It is not. It is the cessation of suffering, not the cessation of existence. It is, in fact, described as the highest happiness, the ultimate peace, a state of unshakable freedom and supreme mental well-being. It is the unconditioned, a state of mind that is no longer pushed and pulled by the winds of praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain. It is the mind that has awakened from the dream of the separate self and now rests in a clear and compassionate understanding of reality. It is the mind that no longer resists the flow of life, but dances with it in perfect harmony. The third noble truth is the Buddha's promise to us. He is not just a doctor who can diagnose our illness. He is a doctor who knows with certainty that a full recovery is possible. This promise gives us the courage and the inspiration to undertake the treatment. And this leads us to the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path, or MAGA. This is the prescription, the medicine itself. It is not enough to know the symptom, the cause, and the prognosis. We need the practical, step-by-step instructions for the journey to freedom. This practical set of instructions is the Noble Eightfold Path. It is a complete guide for living, a holistic training of the heart and mind that touches every aspect of our lives. It is called the Middle Way, as it avoids the extremes of harsh self-denial on one hand and mindless indulgence on the other. The path is not a linear sequence of steps, but 8 interconnected facets that should be developed simultaneously, each one supporting all the others. These 8 factors are traditionally grouped into 3 divisions. The first division is wisdom. This includes right understanding, which is the clear seeing of reality as it is, a direct understanding of these very 4 noble truths of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. It is the correct map, and it includes right intention, which means aligning our hearts with the path, cultivating the intention to let go of clinging, the intention of unconditional loving kindness, and the intention of harmlessness toward all beings. The second division is ethical conduct. This is about bringing our actions in the world into harmony with our intentions. It includes right speech, which means refraining from lying, harsh speech, divisive speech that sets people against each other, and idle chatter. It includes right action, which means refraining from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And it includes right livelihood, which means earning a living in a way that does not cause harm to oneself or others. This ethical foundation creates a mind that is calm and free from remorse, a necessary ground for deeper concentration. The third division is mental discipline. This is the training of the mind itself. It includes right effort, the enthusiastic energy to prevent unwholesome states from arising and to cultivate wholesome ones. It includes right mindfulness, the moment-to-moment awareness that we have been exploring, awareness of the body, feelings, mind, and the nature of reality. And it includes right concentration, the ability to collect and unify the mind to bring it to a state of calm, focused stillness, which allows wisdom to arise. These 4 noble truths in their entirety form a perfect circle of logic and compassion. We begin by honestly and courageously acknowledging the dissatisfaction in our lives, recognizing it as a universal shared experience. We then look deeply to find its cause in our own clinging and craving. Inspired by the profound hope that an end to this suffering is possible, we then undertake the diligent and joyful practice of the Eightfold Path, the prescription that rewires our minds, purifies our hearts, and guides our actions. This is the map to freedom that the Buddha offered to the world, a timeless guide for any human being who wishes to walk the path from suffering to ultimate peace. Having journeyed through the 4 noble truths, we have arrived at a clear and compassionate diagnosis of our condition. We have seen that the friction and dissatisfaction of life, or dukkha, is the primary symptom. We have identified its cause in the deep-seated thirst and craving known as tanha. Now, we must look even more closely at how this craving manifests, how it hardens from a simple thirst into a powerful, gripping force that constructs the very prison in which our minds live. This force is called upadana, which translates as clinging or attachment. If craving is the desire to grasp something, attachment is the state of the clenched fist, the refusal to let go. And the cage this attachment builds around us is a gilded one. It is decorated with all the people, things, ideas, and identities we hold most dear. It feels safe. It feels like home. It feels like us. But it is a cage nonetheless, and it is the ultimate obstacle to true freedom and peace. To understand attachment, it is helpful to use the simple image of your hand. Imagine holding a beautiful, smooth stone in your open palm. You can feel its coolness, admire its colors, appreciate its presence. You are enjoying it fully. This is appreciation. This is healthy love. Now imagine someone might try to take the stone away. You instinctively clench your hand into a tight fist, knuckles white. Your muscles are tense. Your focus narrows to one thing: do not lose this stone. You are no longer appreciating the stone, you are guarding it. You cannot feel its texture anymore, only your own tension. You cannot receive anything else because your hand is closed. This is attachment. It is a state of contraction, of fear, of holding on so tightly that we crush the very thing we wish to enjoy. We do this not just with physical objects, but with everything in our lives. We clench our fists around people, around our opinions, around our memories, and most of all, around our idea of who we are. One of the most tragic consequences of this confusion is that we often mistake our attachment for love. This is a crucial distinction to make on the path to wisdom. Love, in its purest form, such as the Buddhist ideal of metta or loving kindness, is an open palm. It is the unconditional wish for another being to be happy and free. It does not demand anything in return. Love says, I wish for your well-being, whether it includes me or not. It is expansive, generous, and liberating. Attachment, on the other hand, is a clenched fist. It says, I need you to make me happy. I need you to behave in a certain way to validate my sense of security. I need you to stay with me to fill my emptiness. Attachment uses the other person as a source of self-gratification. It is rooted not in generosity, but in the perceived poverty of the self. When we are attached to someone, we suffer intensely when they change or leave, not just because we miss them, but because their departure threatens our own identity, our own source of comfort. The pain is not the clean pain of loss, but the jagged pain of a fractured ego. To learn to love without attachment is one of the most profound spiritual accomplishments. It is to love more purely and more deeply, offering the greatest gift we can give another person, their freedom. This clinging manifests in every area of our lives, but we can see it clearly in four main categories. The first is the most obvious: attachment to sense pleasures. This is more than just enjoying a good meal. It is when our sense of well-being becomes dependent on these pleasures. It is the person who is irritable and unhappy until they have their specific type of coffee in the morning. It is the person who builds their identity around being a connoisseur of wine or music or fashion. Their happiness is not their own. It is held hostage by external things. They are constantly arranging and rearranging the world outside themselves to get the right sensory input, an exhausting and ultimately futile task in a world governed by impermanence. The second, and perhaps the most pervasive in our modern world, is attachment to views and opinions. We grasp our beliefs, our political views, our social opinions, our ideas about how the world should work, and we identify with them completely. They become extensions of our ego. When someone challenges our opinion, it no longer feels like a discussion of ideas. It feels like a personal attack. The body tenses, the heart rate increases, anger arises. Why? Because the ego, the sense of I, feels threatened. This attachment makes us rigid. It makes us unable to truly listen to another person. We are not interested in understanding. We are interested in being right, in defending our position, in winning. The immense polarization and conflict we see in the world is, at its root, a mass outbreak of attachment to views. To practice letting go of this attachment does not mean becoming apathetic or having no values. It means holding our views more lightly, with humility, recognizing that they are just perspectives, not absolute truths. It allows us to engage in dialogue with an open mind and a compassionate heart. The third category is attachment to rites, rituals, and routines. On the surface, this might refer to religious ceremonies, but on a deeper, psychological level, it is about our clinging to our personal habits. It is the rigid belief that our way of doing things is the only correct way. It's the person who becomes deeply unsettled if their morning routine is disrupted, or if the furniture in their house is moved. They have created a fragile sense of security based on external predictability. They are clinging to the form rather than the substance of life. This attachment makes us inflexible and fearful of the unknown, turning the beautiful flow of life into something that must be controlled and managed down to the smallest detail. The fourth and most fundamental attachment the one that gives birth to all the others, is the attachment to a doctrine of self. This is the deepest clench of the fist. It is our clinging to the story of me. We hold onto our identity, constructed from memories, personality traits, and life experiences, as if it were a solid and permanent thing. We are attached to being a successful person, or an artistic person, or a healthy person. But interestingly, we are just as attached to our painful identities. We cling to the story of being an anxious person, a victim of a difficult childhood, or a person who is always betrayed. Why would we cling to pain? Because even a painful, solid identity feels safer to the ego than the liberating but groundless truth of anatta, of no self. This attachment to our story keeps us trapped in the past. It forces us to act in ways that are consistent with our self-image, preventing genuine growth and change. Letting go of this attachment is the most terrifying and most liberating act of all. It is the realization that you are not the limited story you have been telling yourself. You are the vast, open awareness in which the story appears. There is a simple yet profound story that perfectly illustrates the mechanics of this self-imposed prison. In certain parts of Asia, hunters have a clever way of trapping monkeys. They take a hollowed-out coconut or gourd and drill a hole in it, just large enough for a monkey's open hand to slide through. They put some rice or sweet nuts inside the gourd and then tie it securely to a tree. Sooner or later, a monkey will come along, smell the treat, and slide its open hand inside. It will grasp the rice, forming a fist. But now, with its hand in a fist, the hole is too small for it to pull its hand out. The monkey is now tethered to the tree. It will pull and shriek and struggle for hours, but it will not be free. The trap is not complicated. The hunters are not even there. All the monkey has to do to escape is to open its hand and let go of the rice. But its craving, its attachment, is so powerful, its mind so fixated on the prize, that it cannot bring itself to release its grip. And so, it is easily captured. We are that monkey. The gourd is our world, and the rice is the object of our attachment to our possessions, our relationships, our opinions, our identities. We grasp them, we form a fist, and then we wonder why we feel trapped, why we suffer. We pull and we struggle against life, blaming the trap, blaming the world, never realizing that the mechanism of the trap is in our own mind. Our freedom is, and always has been, just one decision away. It is the decision to open our hand, to let go. This does not mean we must renounce the world and live as ascetics. The rice is not the problem. The fist is the problem. Letting go is not an act of physical abandonment, but an internal shift in attitude. It is the shift from a clenched fist to an open palm. It is learning to love people without possessing them, to enjoy experiences without clinging to them, to hold beliefs without being imprisoned by them. It is the discovery of the profound peace and security that is found not in holding on, but in the courage to release. It is the freedom of the open hand, ready to touch the world with grace, and ready to let it go with wisdom. Having seen how attachment binds us, we can now turn our attention to its antidote, the active cultivation of the states that dissolve this clenching, beginning with the boundless, open-hearted wish for well-being known as loving kindness. We have looked unflinchingly into the nature of attachment, seeing it as the clenched fist of the mind, a gilded cage built from our fears and desires. We saw how this grasping, this desperate clinging to things, people, and ideas is the mechanism that hardens craving into true suffering. If the problem is the clenched fist, then the solution must be the practice of opening the hand. But what is the quality of this open hand? What is the energy that allows us to let go with grace and courage? That energy is metta. In the ancient Pali language, metta means loving kindness, unconditional friendliness, or gentle, boundless goodwill. It is a warm, radiant quality of the heart that can be cultivated and developed, just like a muscle. It is not the sentimental, possessive love of romance, nor is it a passive, agreeable niceness. Metta is a strength. It is a profound and powerful force for healing, the ultimate antidote to the poisons of anger, resentment, and fear. It is the practice of wishing well for all beings, without exception and without condition. The journey of metta begins in the most difficult and most important place, with ourselves. In many cultures, the idea of loving oneself is seen as selfish or narcissistic. We are taught to be self-critical, to constantly find our own faults in a misguided effort to improve. We would never speak to a dear friend with the same harsh, judgmental, and unforgiving inner voice that we so often use on ourselves. We walk around with a heart that is starved for its own kindness. But the wisdom of metta teaches us that you cannot pour from an empty cup. Any love, kindness, or compassion we try to offer to others will be shallow, incomplete, or tinged with a subtle expectation of getting something in return, unless it flows from a source of genuine self-acceptance. Offering loving kindness to yourself is not an act of ego. It is the necessary act of filling your own well so that you have abundant water to offer to all who are thirsty. It is about treating yourself like a beloved friend who is struggling, offering the same warmth, forgiveness, and encouragement you would so readily give to them. It is the foundation upon which all other love is built. The formal practice of cultivating this quality is known as metta bhavana, or the development of loving kindness. It is a simple yet profoundly transformative meditation. Let us walk through the stages of this practice. You can begin by finding a comfortable and relaxed posture. Allow your eyes to close gently and bring your awareness to your breath, letting it be natural and easy. Then, bring your attention to the area around your physical heart. You might imagine a warm, soft, golden light in the center of your chest, a light that is the very essence of kindness. Now, you begin by offering the gift of metta to yourself. You silently repeat a few simple, powerful phrases, letting the intention behind them sink into your being. The traditional phrases are, "May I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I live with ease." As you repeat these phrases, try to feel the sentiment behind them. Don't worry if it feels mechanical or awkward at first. The intention is what matters. You are planting seeds. May I be safe from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy in body and in mind. May I be truly happy and content. May I move through my life with a sense of peace and well-being. You continue this for several minutes, bathing yourself in this warm, unconditional goodwill. Once you have established a foundation of kindness for yourself, the next step is to expand the circle. Bring to mind a person who is very easy to love. This could be a dear friend, a beloved mentor, a family member, or even a pet. Someone whose very image brings a smile to your face. Picture them clearly in your mind's eye. And now, direct the flow of metta from your heart to theirs. You use the same phrases, but adapted for them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. As you repeat the phrases, truly wish this for them. Feel your heart opening and sending out this radiant energy of well-wishing. This stage helps the feeling of metta to flow naturally and abundantly, as it is often easier to feel this for others than for ourselves at first. The third stage is a crucial expansion. You bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see or interact with, but for whom you have no strong feelings of like or dislike. It could be a cashier at a grocery store, a person you see on your daily commute, a neighbor you only know by sight. Picture this person and now extend the very same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. This step is powerful because it begins to break down the artificial barriers our minds create between people who matter to me and everyone else. It helps us recognize the shared humanity in strangers. They too, just like us, wish to be safe, healthy, and happy. This practice softens our indifference and opens our heart to a more inclusive and universal kindness. The fourth stage is the most challenging and therefore the most transformative. You now bring to mind a difficult person in your life. It is wise to start with someone who is only mildly irritating or challenging, not the person who has caused you the most pain. Picture this person and with courage, extend the phrases of metta to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. At first, this may feel impossible. The mind may rebel. But here, we must understand what this practice is and is not. It is not about condoning their harmful actions. It is not about forcing yourself to like them. It is not about absolving them of responsibility. It is a practice for your own heart. It is a recognition that this person's harmful actions are very likely born from their own suffering, their own ignorance, and their own pain. Their anger comes from their dukkha. You are wishing for them to be free from the very suffering that causes them to be difficult. You are choosing to stop watering the seed of hatred in your own heart. This practice is the act of laying down your weapon, not for their sake, but for your own. It is the choice to break the cycle of resentment that binds you to them and keeps your own wounds from healing. Finally, having moved through these stages, you let your heart expand in all directions. You radiate metta to all beings, everywhere, to your family and friends, to your neighbors, to people in your city, your country, to people you like and people you dislike, to humans and to animals, to beings seen and unseen, near and far, in all corners of the universe. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings live with ease. You let your heart become a boundless sun, radiating warmth and kindness without discrimination and without limit. This practice, when undertaken regularly, has a profound effect. It is a direct and powerful antidote to the states of anger, ill will, and resentment. It is impossible to hold a genuine feeling of metta in your mind at the same time as a feeling of hatred. One will always displace the other. By practicing metta, you are actively weakening the conditioned neural pathways of anger and strengthening the pathways of kindness and compassion. You change your default response to the world. It is the ultimate act of self-defense, for it protects your own mind from the poison of ill will. This kindness is not a weakness. It is a source of indomitable strength. There is a famous story from the life of the Buddha that illustrates this. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, conspired to murder him. He got an elephant, Nalagiri, drunk on intoxicants, and set it loose on the narrow street where the Buddha was walking. The elephant was in a terrifying rage, charging forward, destroying everything in its path. The Buddha's disciples panicked and fled for their lives, but the Buddha stood his ground, calm and serene. He did not prepare a weapon or a shield. He simply turned his full attention to the charging beast and radiated a powerful, boundless, and concentrated field of pure metta. The story says that as the raging elephant entered this field of loving kindness, it began to slow down. Its enraged trumpeting ceased. Its steps became gentle. It came to the Buddha, knelt down, and was completely tamed by the sheer force of unconditional goodwill. This is the power of metta. It is not a fragile sentiment. It is a force of nature, a radiant power of the heart capable of disarming the most violent rage, both within ourselves and in the world around us. It is the open-handed way of being that finally dissolves the gilded cage, allowing us to touch all of life with a brave, wise, and tender heart. And from this ground of universal friendliness, an even deeper quality of the heart can now begin to blossom. The ability to empathize with and respond to the suffering of others, a quality known as karuna, or compassion. From the warm, radiant sun of metta, of universal loving kindness, a new quality of the heart begins to blossom. Metta is the sincere wish for all beings to be happy and well. But what happens when this boundless goodwill encounters the reality of the world, the inevitable truth of dukkha, of suffering? What happens when a heart full of kindness looks upon a being who is in pain? It trembles. And that tremble, that tender, courageous movement of the heart in the face of suffering, is karuna, or compassion. If metta is the wish for happiness, karuna is the wish for the cessation of suffering. It is not merely a feeling of sadness, but an active, engaged empathy. It is the heart's resonance with the pain of another, coupled with a deep aspiration to alleviate that pain. It is the quality that moves us from a peaceful state of well-wishing into a state of profound connection and engaged action in the world. It is the recognition that no one's liberation is separate from our own. In our everyday language, we often confuse compassion with a similar, yet fundamentally different emotion: pity. Understanding the distinction between them is crucial, for one builds bridges while the other erects walls. Pity is a top-down emotion. When we pity someone, we look upon their suffering from a position of perceived superiority. Our heart says, "Oh, you poor thing, your life is so difficult. I am so glad that I am not you." Pity creates and reinforces a sense of separation. It establishes a hierarchy. There is the fortunate one who is bestowing the pity, and the unfortunate one who is receiving it. It can feel condescending, and it keeps a safe distance between our own heart and the raw reality of another's pain. It is looking at suffering from behind a thick pane of glass. Karuna, true compassion, does the opposite. It dissolves the separation. It is a horizontal connection, an experience of shared humanity. It is born from the deep recognition of the first noble truth, that all beings are subject to suffering, that we are all vulnerable, that we all share in the same fundamental condition. The compassionate heart does not say, "Poor you." It says, "I feel this with you." It recognizes the other person's pain as a familiar landscape, for it has known pain itself. The Latin root of the word compassion is compati, which means to suffer with. It is the courage to shatter the pane of glass, to step into the other person's reality, and to allow their suffering to touch our own heart. It is the profound and liberating realization that your suffering is not foreign to me. In that shared space, true healing and connection can occur. And yet, we often recoil from this. We feel a twinge of another's pain, and our immediate instinct is to shut down, to turn away, to distract ourselves. Why do we fear our own compassion? We fear it because we are afraid of being overwhelmed. We look at the immense suffering in the world, the news reports, the struggles in our own communities, the pain of those we love, and we worry that if we truly open our hearts to it all, we will drown in a bottomless ocean of sorrow. This is a very real fear, and it points to a phenomenon often called compassion fatigue or empathic distress. This is the burnout that can happen when we absorb the pain of others without the proper inner resources to process it. We become exhausted, cynical, and ultimately, we close our hearts again as a form of self-protection. But the boundless compassion of a Buddha or a Bodhisattva is not this raw, overwhelming empathy. True karuna is sustainable because it is always balanced by two other essential qualities of an awakened mind: wisdom, panna, and equanimity, upekkha. Wisdom understands that we cannot fix the entire world. It recognizes the complexity of cause and effect, and it knows our own limits. It allows us to act effectively where we can, without carrying the false burden of believing we are responsible for solving every problem. Equanimity is the spacious, unshakable balance of the mind. It is the ability to be present with intense pain, own or another's, without being consumed by it. It is the deep, loving acceptance that we cannot control all outcomes. It trusts in the unfolding of life, even when it is painful. When compassion is supported by the pillars of wisdom and equanimity, it ceases to be a draining force and becomes a renewable, boundless resource. It is no longer a bleeding heart, but a brave and steady heart, capable of being with suffering without being broken by it. Compassion, in its essence, is an active verb, but its action does not always have to be a grand, dramatic gesture. Often, the most powerful act of compassion we can offer is startlingly simple. It is the practice of deep listening. In our hyper-distracted world, the gift of one's full, undivided, non-judgmental presence is one of the rarest and most healing things we can offer. To listen deeply means to set aside our own agenda. We are not listening in order to formulate a reply, to offer advice, to fix the problem, or to share our own similar story. We are listening simply to understand. We offer the other person a safe space, a sanctuary of silence and attention in which they can unfold their own heart. We listen not just to the words being spoken, but to the emotions bubbling beneath them. We listen to the silences, the hesitations, the catch in the throat. In doing so, we communicate a powerful message. You matter. Your story is important. I am here with you. You are not alone. This simple act can alleviate one of the deepest forms of human suffering, the pain of isolation. By offering a compassionate ear, we are sharing the other person's burden and making it lighter, often without having to say a single word. This boundless, fearless quality of karuna is embodied in the ideal of the bodhisattva. In Mahayana Buddhism, a bodhisattva is a great being who, motivated by immense compassion, postpones their own final entry into the peace of nirvana in order to help all other suffering beings achieve enlightenment. There is a story that the great bodhisattva of compassion, Avalokiteshvara, had worked for eons to liberate beings from suffering. Upon seeing that he had emptied the hell realms, he looked back, only to see that they had instantly filled up again with countless more suffering beings. In a moment of despair, his head shattered into 1,000 pieces. But his compassionate resolve was so powerful that his body reassembled, now with 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes, the better to see the suffering of the world and to reach out to help. The bodhisattva willingly engages with suffering, not because they are a martyr, but because their heart has expanded to such a degree that the distinction between self and other has dissolved. Their own happiness is seen as intrinsically and inextricably linked with the happiness of all. Responding to the cries of the world is no longer a duty. It is their most natural and joyful expression. The bodhisattva's vow is the ultimate expression of karuna, courageous and unwavering commitment to share in the burden of the world until all beings are free. For most of us, this ideal may seem impossibly distant, but the path of the bodhisattva starts with a single, small act of compassion. It begins with the decision today to truly listen to a friend in need. It begins with offering a kind word to a struggling stranger. It begins with a moment of patience with a difficult family member. Karuna is the trembling of a heart that has become brave enough not to look away from pain. It is the force that connects our personal spiritual journey with the needs of the world around us. It is the natural, beautiful, and powerful expression of our fundamental interconnectedness. It is the realization that in healing another, we are truly healing ourselves. And as we cultivate this compassionate heart, we see the need for a balanced perspective, a steadiness that can hold both the joy and the sorrow of the world. This leads us to the next great quality of the heart, the sublime and spacious peace of equanimity. We have walked through the great diagnosis of the human condition as presented in the Four Noble Truths. We have faced the symptom of pervasive dissatisfaction, dukkha. We have identified its cause in the clinging and craving of tanha. We have been offered the profound hope of a cure, nirodha, the complete cessation of suffering. And now, we arrive at the fourth and final truth, the prescription itself. This is the practical, tangible, and life-altering medicine known as the Noble Eightfold Path, or Magga. This is not a set of abstract theories or beliefs to be accepted on faith. It is a living path, a set of skills to be cultivated, a comprehensive guide for navigating our lives in a way that leads directly away from confusion and suffering and toward clarity, peace, and ultimate freedom. Think of it as the detailed, turn-by-turn directions on the map that leads to the end of suffering. It is a path of integration, weaving together our understanding, our ethics, and our mental training into a single, seamless way of life. The 8 factors of this path are not sequential steps, where you master one before moving to the next. Rather, they are like 8 interwoven strands of a single, strong rope. Each strand supports and strengthens all the others. A little progress in one area makes progress in other areas easier. To make this profound path easier to understand, we can group these 8 factors into 3 essential trainings: the training in wisdom, the training in ethical conduct, and the training in mental discipline. Let us begin with the foundation upon which the entire path is built, the training in wisdom. This is the compass that sets the direction for our entire journey. Without wisdom, our best efforts can be misguided and our noblest intentions can go astray. The first factor of the path and the foundation of wisdom is right understanding or right view. This is the cognitive piece of the puzzle. It means seeing the world and ourselves clearly as they truly are, free from the distortions of our fears, desires, and conditioning. It is the correct map of reality. In a practical sense, right understanding means grasping, on both an intellectual and an experiential level, the truths we have been exploring. It is the understanding of the law of cause and effect, or Karma 3 recognition that our actions have consequences. It is the direct seeing of the three characteristics of existence, anicca, dukkha, and anatta, in our own lives. And most importantly, it is the clear comprehension of the Four Noble Truths themselves. Right understanding is the aha moment, when the teachings cease to be something you have heard and become something you know in your bones because you have seen it for yourself. The second factor of wisdom is right intention, or right thought. If right understanding is the map, right intention is the motivation to actually make the journey. It is the conscious alignment of our heart's deepest desires with the path of liberation. It is about purifying the very energy that drives our lives. The Buddha spoke of three types of right intention. The first is the intention of renunciation. This doesn't necessarily mean giving up all our worldly possessions. It means cultivating the intention to let go of the clenched fist of attachment. It is the intention to renounce our addiction to sense pleasures, our desperate clinging to outcomes, and our insatiable craving for more. It is the choice to move towards simplicity, contentment, and inner freedom rather than outer accumulation. The second is the intention of loving kindness, the direct application of metta. This is the active intention to be a source of goodwill and friendliness in the world, to abandon ill will, resentment, and hatred. The third is the intention of harmlessness, born from compassion, or karuna. This is the sincere intention not to cause harm, physically or mentally, to any living being, including ourselves. These three intentions of letting go, of goodwill, and of harmlessness transform the heart from a place of selfish craving into a fountain of wisdom and compassion. This inner wisdom must then express itself in the world. This is where the second training comes in, the training in ethical conduct, or sila. Sila is how we translate our inner clarity and pure intentions into our speech and actions. It is about living in a way that causes no harm, a way that is blameless and beautiful. This ethical foundation is absolutely essential, for it creates a mind that is free from the agitation of guilt and remorse, and a calm mind is necessary for the deep concentration that leads to liberation. The third factor of the path is right speech. Our words have immense power, the power to heal or to wound. Right speech asks us to use this power wisely. It involves refraining from four types of harmful speech. First, we abstain from lying and deception, committing ourselves to speaking the truth. Second, we abstain from slanderous or divisive speech, words that set people against each other. Instead, we speak in ways that promote harmony and understanding. Third, we abstain from harsh or abusive language, choosing instead to speak with gentleness, kindness, and courtesy. And fourth, we abstain from idle chatter, the meaningless gossip and talk that wastes time and clutters the mind. Instead, we aim to speak words that are purposeful, meaningful, and beneficial. The fourth factor is right action. This concerns our bodily actions. It asks us to live in a way that respects the lives and well-being of all. It involves abstaining from three main types of harmful action. First, we abstain from taking life, from killing any living creature. Second, we abstain from taking what is not given, which means refraining from stealing, cheating, or any form of dishonesty. Third, we abstain from sexual misconduct, which means avoiding any sexual behavior that is based on exploitation, harm, or deceit. The fifth factor is right livelihood. Since our work consumes a great portion of our time and energy, it is vital that the way we earn our living is in harmony with our ethical values. Right livelihood means choosing a profession that does not cause harm to ourselves or others. The classical texts advise avoiding businesses based on weapons, human trafficking, meat production, poisons, and intoxicants. In our modern world, this principle encourages us to reflect on the impact of our work. Are we contributing to a more just, peaceful, and sustainable world? Or are we participating in systems that create harm? To engage in right livelihood is to make our entire professional life a part of our spiritual practice. Finally, we come to the third great training, the training in mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the practical cultivation of the mind itself. It is the inner work, the mental gymnastics, that allows wisdom to sharpen and ethical conduct to become natural. The sixth factor is right effort. This is the energetic, athletic quality of the path. It is the conscious application of our will to transform our minds. This involves four great efforts. First, it is the effort to prevent unwholesome states like anger, greed, or jealousy from arising. Second, it is the effort to abandon these unwholesome states if they have already arisen. Third, it is the effort to cultivate new wholesome states like kindness, mindfulness, and generosity that we have not yet developed. And fourth, it is the effort to maintain and develop the wholesome states that are already present. It is a proactive and joyful engagement in our own mental cultivation. The seventh factor is right mindfulness. This is the heart of meditative practice, the skill of present moment awareness that we have been exploring all along. It is the faculty of knowing what is happening while it is happening without judgment. Right mindfulness is cultivated through the four foundations: being mindful of the body, of feelings, of the mind, states themselves, and of the underlying nature of reality. It is the clear, bright light of awareness that illuminates our inner world, allowing us to see things as they truly are and to break free from habitual, unconscious reactions. The eighth and final factor is right concentration. This refers to the development of a unified, focused, and tranquil mind, typically through the practice of formal meditation. As we practice right effort and right mindfulness, the mind, which is usually scattered and fragmented like the light from a bare bulb, becomes collected and powerful. Right concentration is like gathering that light and focusing it into a single, coherent laser beam. A mind that is concentrated in this way is no longer disturbed by distractions. It becomes immensely still, clear, and penetrating. It is this laser-like focus that can cut through the final veils of ignorance, leading to the direct, liberating insight that is the culmination of the path. These 8 factors, working together, create a life of profound beauty and balance. Wisdom gives us direction. Ethical conduct ensures our journey is harmless and peaceful, and mental discipline gives us the strength and clarity to see the journey through to its end. The path is not easy, but it is a good path, a path of ever-increasing peace and happiness. There is a simple analogy that captures its essence. Imagine a master carpenter who needs to cut a perfectly straight line along a large piece of wood. He does not simply trust his eye and begin to saw. Instead, he takes a long piece of string and covers it in black ink. He pulls the string taut from one end of the wood to the other, and with a sharp flick, he snaps it against the surface. When he lifts the string, it has left a perfect, unerringly straight ink line. All he has to do now is guide his saw along this line. The Noble Eightfold Path is that ink line for our lives. In the midst of the crooked, confusing, and often chaotic timber of our existence, it provides the clear, direct, and perfect guide that allows us to cut a straight path from suffering to freedom, from ignorance to enlightenment. Having laid out the great map of the Noble Eightfold Path, we now take our first step onto the path itself. We begin with the training in ethical conduct, or sila, and the very first element of this training is right speech. This is a profound place to start, for our speech is the most frequent and powerful way we interact with the world. It is the bridge that connects our inner landscape with the lives of others. Every day, we build, repair, or demolish these bridges with the words we choose. Words are not mere sounds. They are potent actions. They are a form of karma, creating ripples of cause and effect that shape our relationships, our communities, and the very state of our own mind. A mind in turmoil produces turbulent speech words that are harsh, deceitful, and chaotic. A mind at peace naturally gives rise to speech that is clear, kind, and harmonious. To practice right speech, then, is not simply to police our words. It is to undertake a deep and transformative purification of the heart and mind. It is to learn to use this incredible power as an instrument of peace, not a weapon of suffering. The Buddha's teaching on right speech is not a list of commandments, but a graceful and practical guide, showing us what to abstain from and what to cultivate in its place. It is a fourfold practice, a conscious training in moving from falsehood to truth, from division to harmony, from harshness to gentleness, and from frivolous noise to purposeful silence. Let us first examine the practice of abstaining from false speech. On the surface, this simply means not telling lies, but its meaning is far deeper. False speech includes not just outright lies, but all forms of verbal dishonesty. It includes the subtle exaggerations we use to make ourselves look more impressive, the convenient white lies we tell to avoid minor discomfort, the promises we make with no real intention of keeping, and the hypocrisy of saying one thing while believing or doing another. It is the act of creating a schism between reality and what we present to the world. Why do we do this? The roots of false speech are almost always found in fear and greed. We lie because we fear the consequences of the truth. We fear disapproval, or we fear that our unadorned reality is not good enough. We lie to gain an advantage, to manipulate a situation, or to protect the fragile image of our ego. Each lie, no matter how small, is a vote for fear over courage. It is a declaration that we are not comfortable with reality as it is. The consequences of this are immense. The most immediate casualty of false speech is trust. Trust is the invisible foundation of all healthy relationships and all functioning societies. Every lie, when discovered, erodes this foundation. A person known for dishonesty becomes an island, isolated from the genuine intimacy and connection that only truth can foster. Furthermore, living a lie is incredibly stressful. It creates a complex, fragile architecture of deceit that must be constantly maintained. We have to remember which lie we told to which person and live in constant fear of being exposed. This mental burden is exhausting, creating a mind that is perpetually agitated and insecure. Perhaps most insidiously, when we habitually lie to others, we begin to lie to ourselves. Our own sense of reality becomes blurred, and we lose touch with our own inner compass, our own integrity. Cultivating right speech, therefore, means making a radical commitment to truthfulness. This is far more than just avoiding lies. It is the active practice of authenticity. It is the courage to be vulnerable, to present ourselves to the world without pretense. It is the development of a deep integrity where our inner world and our outer expression are in alignment. A person committed to truthfulness becomes a sanctuary of reliability and safety for others. Their words have weight and power, and their own mind becomes clear, uncluttered, and fearless. The second practice is to abstain from divisive speech. This is the use of words to drive a wedge between people, to create discord and animosity where harmony could exist. It is the act of backbiting, of speaking ill of someone behind their back. It is slander, the deliberate spreading of falsehoods to damage another's reputation. In its most common form, it is gossip, the carrying of tales from one person to another, often with a subtle negative spin. In our modern digital age, divisive speech has become a pandemic. It is the anonymous trolling that seeks to provoke anger, the spread of us versus them rhetoric that dehumanizes entire groups of people, and the gleeful participation in online shaming. The motivation for divisive speech often comes from a dark place in the psyche. It can be born of jealousy, the desire to diminish someone else in order to feel better about ourselves. It can come from a craving for drama and excitement, a way to feel important by being at the center of a conflict. Or it can arise from a deep-seated insecurity that seeks to solidify its own identity by creating a clear in-group and a vilified out-group. The karmic result of such speech is a world poisoned by suspicion and conflict. It shatters friendships, fractures families, and creates toxic environments in workplaces and communities. The person who regularly engages in divisive speech may feel a momentary sense of power or belonging, but they ultimately create a lonely and fearful world for themselves. They become known as untrustworthy, a source of discord, and genuine friends will keep their distance. To practice right speech is to consciously choose to be a force for unity. It means refusing to participate in gossip. When you hear a negative story about someone, you can make the compassionate choice to let that story die with you rather than passing it on. It means actively looking for the good in others, and speaking of it, it means using our words to build bridges of understanding, to heal rifts, and to remind people of their shared humanity. It is the profound and beautiful practice of being a peacemaker. The third practice is to abstain from harsh speech. These are words used as weapons intended to inflict emotional pain. It includes obvious forms like shouting, insults, name-calling, and profanity used in anger, but it also includes more subtle forms of verbal violence: biting sarcasm, belittling comments that masquerade as jokes, a condescending tone, or words that are designed to humiliate and shame another person. Harsh speech is almost always an eruption of our own inner pain. It is the second arrow made audible. When we feel threatened, frustrated, or hurt, the untrained mind lashes out, attempting to regain a sense of control by overpowering another. But this is an illusion. The momentary satisfaction of venting our anger is quickly replaced by the poison of remorse and the damage of a wounded relationship. The consequences of harsh speech are devastating. It leaves deep and lasting scars on the hearts of others, especially children, who are particularly vulnerable to the words of adults. It systematically destroys love, trust, and intimacy, and it profoundly damages our own mind. Each outburst of anger strengthens the neural pathways of aggression, making anger our default response. It becomes a destructive habit that robs us of our own peace. Cultivating right speech means developing the strength of gentleness. It means learning to pause when we feel triggered, to take a breath, and to choose a response rather than indulging in a reaction. It is the practice of speaking to others with the same kindness and respect we would wish for ourselves. It is learning to disagree without being disagreeable, to express our needs without making demands, and to offer criticism constructively and privately with the genuine intention to help, not to wound. It is the choice to make our voice a source of comfort and safety in a harsh world. The fourth and final practice is to abstain from idle chatter. This refers to speech that is empty, aimless, and frivolous. It is the pointless talk that fills time but conveys no meaning, the endless gossip about celebrities, the superficial commentary on trivial matters. In our age of constant connectivity, idle chatter is not just spoken, it is typed. It is the endless scrolling through social media feeds, the leaving of thoughtless comments, the sharing of memes and videos that serve only to distract and numb the mind. We engage in idle chatter for many reasons. We do it to avoid the discomfort of silence, both internal and external. We do it to create a superficial feeling of connection without the risk of genuine intimacy. It is the sound of a restless mind, a mind that cannot bear to be alone with itself. While it may seem harmless, habitual idle chatter has a corrosive effect. It dissipates our precious mental energy, leaving us feeling drained and unfocused. It trivializes the mind, training it to be shallow and easily distracted, and it devalues the very currency of communication. If 90% of our words are meaningless, they lose their power and impact when we actually have something important to say. The antidote to idle chatter is not to become stern and humorless, but to cultivate purposeful speech and to appreciate the value of noble silence. Purposeful speech is considerate. Before we speak, we can ask ourselves a simple set of questions. Is what I am about to say true? Is it kind? Is it beneficial to myself or others? And is this the right time to say it? This simple filter can eliminate a vast amount of unnecessary talk. This leads us to the beauty of noble silence. This is not an empty, awkward absence of noise. It is a rich, alive, and restful state. It is the silence of a mind that is at ease, a mind that is present and observant. It is in this noble silence that we can finally hear the subtle voice of our own intuition. It is in this silence that we can truly offer the gift of deep listening to another. It is a space of clarity and wisdom. There is an old story that powerfully illustrates the irreversible nature of our words. A man in a village spread a vicious rumor about the wise old sage who lived on the hill. Later, filled with remorse, the man went to the sage to apologize and ask for forgiveness. The sage listened patiently and then said, "I will forgive you, but first you must do one thing. Take a feather pillow, go to the highest point in the village on a windy day, cut it open, and shake all the feathers out." The man did as he was told, and the wind carried the thousands of tiny feathers far and wide. He returned to the sage and said, "I have done it." The sage then said, "Good, now for the final part of your penance, go and collect every single one of those feathers and put them back in the pillow." The man's face fell. "But that's impossible," he cried. "The wind has scattered them everywhere. I can never get them all back." The wise sage looked at him kindly and said, "So it is with your words. They have spread on the wind of gossip from person to person. You can never fully take them back. Your apology is accepted, but remember this lesson well. Oh, this is the power we wield every time we open our mouths. Right speech is the moment-to-moment practice of wielding this power with the precision, care, and compassion of a master artisan. It is not about suppression, but about transformation. It is about understanding that every word we speak is a seed. We can choose to plant seeds of discord, falsehood, and pain, or we can choose to be conscious gardeners, carefully planting the seeds of truth, harmony, kindness, and peace in our own minds and in the hearts of everyone we meet. As we walk the Noble Eightfold Path, having explored the profound importance of our speech, we now turn our attention to the law that governs the consequences of all our actions, whether spoken, thought, or performed by the body. This is the universal principle of karma. There are few spiritual concepts as widely known, yet as deeply misunderstood as karma. In the popular imagination, it is often viewed as a kind of cosmic justice system, a supernatural force that keeps a running tally of our good and bad deeds, dispensing rewards and punishments accordingly. It is frequently confused with fate or destiny, a pre-written script for our lives that we are powerless to change. The Buddhist understanding of karma is radically different. It is far less mystical and far more practical, psychological, and empowering. Karma is not fate, it is not judgment. It is simply a natural law, as impersonal and reliable as the law of gravity. The word karma literally means action, and the law of karma is the law of action and result. It states, quite simply, that every intentional action produces a corresponding result. It is the universe's fundamental principle of cause and effect, and understanding it places the power to shape our own lives directly into our hands. The most crucial element in understanding karma, the key that unlocks its true meaning, is the concept of cetana, which translates as intention, volition, or will. The Buddha made this explicitly clear when he said, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma. Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind." This means that the karmic weight of an action is determined not by the external act itself, but by the quality of the intention that motivates it. The physical world may look at what we do. The law of karma looks at why we do it. The same physical act can create vastly different karmic ripples, depending on the state of the heart and mind behind it. Consider this example. A skilled surgeon takes a scalpel and makes a deep incision in a patient's body. A few streets away, a mugger takes a knife and makes a similar incision in a victim's body. Externally, the actions are almost identical, a sharp blade cutting human flesh, but the intentions are polar opposites. The surgeon is motivated by a desire to heal, by compassion, by goodwill. The mugger is motivated by greed, by aggression, by a callous disregard for the well-being of another. The surgeon's action creates wholesome, positive karma. The mugger's action creates unwholesome, negative karma. The action is the same, but the intention changes everything. This applies to our speech as well. You might say the words, "That was a very interesting outfit you wore yesterday." If your intention is to be subtly mocking and passive-aggressive, you are planting a seed of unwholesome karma. If your intention is one of genuine, friendly curiosity, you are planting a wholesome seed. The universe does not judge the words. It responds to the intention that gives them life. So, what determines whether an intention is wholesome or unwholesome? The Buddhist teachings identify 3 roots of all unwholesome actions and 3 roots of all wholesome actions. Think of these as the fundamental qualities of the soil in which we plant the seeds of our actions. The 3 unwholesome roots are greed, hatred, and delusion. Greed refers to all actions driven by clinging, craving, attachment, and selfish desire. Hatred refers to all actions driven by aversion, anger, ill will, resentment, and the desire to harm or destroy. And delusion refers to all actions driven by ignorance, confusion, and a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of reality, the failure to see anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Any intentional thought, word, or deed that springs from one of these 3 toxic roots will inevitably, sooner or later, bear the fruit of suffering for ourselves and for others. Conversely, the 3 wholesome roots are non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. Non-greed is the quality of generosity, liberality, and letting go. It is the open hand rather than the clenched fist. Non-hatred is the quality of loving kindness, metta, and compassion, karuna. It is the sincere wish for all beings to be happy and free from suffering. And non-delusion is the quality of wisdom, clarity, and understanding. It is the mind that sees things as they truly are. Any intentional action planted in the fertile soil of generosity, love, and wisdom will inevitably, sooner or later, bear the fruit of happiness, peace, and well-being for ourselves and for others. The law of karma is as simple and as profound as the law of agriculture. You reap what you sow. If you plant corn, you will not harvest thorns. If you plant thorns, you will not harvest corn. This understanding directly dismantles the paralyzing idea of karma as fate. The Buddha taught that we are simultaneously the heirs of our past karma and the creators of our present karma. This is a crucial two-sided truth. Being the heir means that our present circumstances are health, our wealth, our relationships, our disposition are, to a large extent, the ripening of karmic seeds we planted in the past, in this life, and in previous lives. This perspective can foster a sense of radical acceptance. It helps us to understand why difficult things sometimes happen, even when we are trying to live a good life. It is not an arbitrary punishment, but simply the maturation of an old seed. This understanding allows us to meet our present difficulties with patience and fortitude, without falling into the trap of blame or self-pity. But far more important is the second side of the coin. We are the creator. In this very moment, with every intention we form, we are planting new seeds. We are actively shaping our future. Your past karma may have determined the hand of cards you were dealt in this life, but your present karma, your present intentional actions, determines how you play that hand. And how you play the hand is far more important than the hand itself. This is the ultimate message of empowerment. Your past does not have to define you. The present moment is the point of power, the place where new causes can be created, where a different future can be sown. You are the farmer of your own life. You may have inherited a field with some weeds and poor soil from past seasons, but right now, you hold the seeds of generosity, kindness, and wisdom in your hand. You have the power to pull the weeds of hatred, to enrich the soil with mindfulness, and to plant the seeds that will create a future harvest of peace. There is no story more powerful in illustrating this principle of transformation than that of Angulimala, whose name means finger garland. Angulimala was a terrifying serial killer who roamed the forests of ancient India. Under the influence of a misguided teacher, he had vowed to kill 1,000 people, and as proof of his kills, he would cut off a finger from each victim and wear it as a grotesque necklace. He had 999 fingers and was the terror of the entire kingdom. One day the Buddha, seeing with his wisdom that Angulimala was ripe for transformation, deliberately walked into the forest where he lived. Angulimala saw him and began to chase him, intending for the Buddha to be his final victim. But a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was walking calmly, Angulimala, running with all his might, could not catch up to him. Exhausted and confused, he shouted, "Stop, monk! Stop!" The Buddha, still walking, turned and replied, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not." These words struck Angulimala like a bolt of lightning. The Buddha explained, "I have stopped creating the causes of suffering. I have laid down the sword. You are still running, still creating violence, still trapped in the cycle of action and result." In that moment, something broke open in Angulimala. He saw the horror of his actions and the deep suffering he was creating for himself and others. He threw down his weapons, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and asked to become a monk. Despite his horrific past, the Buddha accepted him. Angulimala became a diligent student. He meditated with great effort, facing the immense weight of his past actions with courage. And through the sheer power of his wholesome effort in the present, he completely purified his mind and became a fully enlightened arahant, a being who has realized nibbana. The story of Angulimala is the ultimate testament to the power of present action. It proves that no one is defined by their past, that no karmic debt is a permanent life sentence. Our potential for awakening is always present, and the key to unlocking it lies in the intentions we cultivate moment by moment. Karma, then, is not a doctrine of fear, but a doctrine of hope. It reveals a universe that is orderly, just, and responsive. It teaches us to be deeply mindful of our inner world, for our intentions are the seeds of our destiny. It calls on us to take full and complete responsibility for our lives, liberating us from the childlike pattern of blaming others or fate for our unhappiness. Every thought we think, every word we speak, every action we take is a choice. It is a cause we are setting in motion. The law of karma simply and compassionately reminds us, the harvest will one day be our own. Let us choose to plant a garden of peace. Having explored the universal law of karma, we see with ever greater clarity how the intentions rooted in our own hearts shape our destiny. We have identified the three unwholesome roots: greed, delusion, and hatred as the very source of suffering-producing actions. Of these three poisons, perhaps none is more volatile, more immediately destructive, and more tragically misunderstood than the fire of hatred in all its forms, from mild irritation to explosive rage. Anger is a fire that, once lit, promises to burn away our enemies but always consumes us first. It is a poison we drink, hoping the other person will die. In our journey toward peace, learning to skillfully work with the immense energy of anger is not an optional side path. It is an essential and life-altering practice. The Buddhist path offers a third way, a middle way between the two extremes we usually resort to: the way of suppression, where we deny and bottle up the anger, and the way of indulgence, where we vent it uncontrollably. This third way is the way of mindful transformation. It is the art of learning to use the cool water of wisdom and compassion to douse the fire, rather than pouring on the flammable oil of blame and reaction. Before we can transform anger, we must first understand its anatomy. Anger belongs to the family of aversion, or dosa, one of the three great poisons. This family includes a wide spectrum of emotions, from subtle impatience and annoyance, to frustration and resentment, all the way to outright fury, rage, and deep-seated hatred. All of these states share a common characteristic. They are a forceful pushing away, a violent no to reality as it is presenting itself. Anger is one of the most powerful manifestations of the second arrow. The first arrow is the initial event. Someone insults us, a driver cuts us off in traffic, a plan fails. The immediate raw sting of that event is the first arrow. Anger is the story we then furiously write about it. The second arrow we shoot into ourselves. How dare they? They have no respect. This is an injustice. They did this deliberately to me. This narrative, which centers on a threatened and indignant sense of self, is the very fuel that ignites the fire. When this fire ignites, its effects are immediate and total. It hijacks our entire being. Observe how it feels in the body. The blood rushes to the face, creating a flush of heat. The jaw clenches, the fists tighten, the shoulders hunch forward in a posture of attack. The heart begins to pound, pumping adrenaline through our system, preparing the body for battle. The breath becomes shallow and rapid. In this state of physiological alarm, our higher cognitive functions shut down. The mind narrows, becoming laser-focused on the object of its anger, on the perceived threat and the story of blame. There is no room for perspective, for reason, or for compassion. In this state, we are no longer in control. The anger is. A common belief in modern psychology is that venting this anger shouting, hitting a pillow, expressing it freely is a healthy release. From a Buddhist perspective, while this is certainly better than suppressing it until it makes us physically ill, unrestrained venting is a dangerous practice. Indulging in anger is quite simply practicing anger. The more you do it, the better you get at it. Each outburst deepens the habitual neural pathways of reactivity, making it easier and quicker to get angry the next time. It is like adding more and more oil to the fire, ensuring it will burn brighter and longer in the future. So, if both suppression and indulgence are flawed, what is the skillful path? It begins with the first responder of all inner work, mindfulness. This is the emergency protocol for when you feel the heat of the fire beginning to rise. The very first step is to recognize and acknowledge its presence, clearly and without judgment. The moment you feel the telltale signs of irritation or anger, you can make a soft mental note. Ah, anger is here. This is a feeling of anger. This simple act is revolutionary. In that moment of recognition, you are creating a tiny sliver of space between the awareness and the emotion itself. You are no longer saying, "I am angry," which is a total identification. You are saying, "Anger is present in me." You have shifted from being the fire to being the one who is aware of the fire. This is the beginning of freedom. The second step is to consciously and deliberately shift your attention from the story in your head to the raw physical sensations of the anger in your body. This is a crucial move that takes the fuel away from the mental narrative. Instead of obsessing over what that person said or did, you ask yourself, where do I feel this anger in my body? You become an inner scientist, exploring the sensations with detached curiosity. There's a tightness in my jaw. There's heat in my chest. My stomach feels like it's in a knot. My hands want to clench. You stay with these physical feelings, simply observing them as they change and shift. The third step is to breathe with these sensations. You use your breath as a tool of compassion for your own body. As you breathe in, imagine you are directing the breath to the areas of tension. As you breathe out, imagine you are gently softening and releasing that tension. You are not trying to force the anger to go away. You are holding it in a spacious, kind, and accepting awareness. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh compared this to holding a crying baby. When a baby cries, you don't yell at it or throw it out of the house. You pick it up, you hold it tenderly, and you soothe it. In the same way, you hug your anger with the gentle, embracing energy of your mindfulness and your breath. You are being a friend to yourself in a moment of suffering. As you stay with the physical sensations, you can also notice the thoughts that arise, but instead of getting swept away by them, you can continue to label them. There are blaming thoughts. There is a desire for revenge. There is a feeling of injustice. This practice keeps you grounded in the role of the observer, preventing you from being consumed by the flames. Once the immediate intensity of the fire has subsided through mindfulness, the deeper work of transformation can begin. This is the detective work of investigating the roots of our anger. Anger is very often a secondary emotion, a tough-looking bodyguard that we hire to protect our more soft, vulnerable, and painful feelings. It often feels more powerful and less vulnerable to be angry than it does to feel hurt, afraid, or ashamed. So, we must have the courage to look behind the mask of our anger. We can ask ourselves a series of gentle but penetrating questions. What am I truly afraid of in this situation? Often, anger arises from the fear of losing control, the fear of being seen as inadequate, or the fear of being disrespected, which threatens our sense of self. What hurt lies beneath this anger? Perhaps the other person's words or actions touched on an old wound, a feeling of being unseen, unloved, or abandoned. What rigid expectation of mine was not met? Anger frequently erupts when reality does not conform to our fixed ideas of how things should be. This reveals a hidden attachment. By investigating in this way, we begin to develop wisdom around our anger. We see that it is not a monstrous, alien force, but a misguided attempt by our own mind to protect us from pain. When we see its vulnerable roots, our attitude toward our own anger softens, and we can begin to relate to it with compassion rather than fear. With this compassionate understanding, we can now apply the direct antidote. If anger is a fire, the water that can extinguish it is metta, or loving kindness. The practice is twofold. First, and most importantly, we apply metta to ourselves. To be in a state of anger is to be in a state of suffering. The most skillful first response is to offer yourself the same kindness you would offer a friend who is in pain. You can place a hand on your heart and silently repeat the phrases, "May I be peaceful. May I be free from this suffering. May I be free from the pain of anger." This is a profoundly healing act that soothes the agitated mind and reaffirms our commitment to our own well-being. The second, more advanced practice is to extend metta towards the person or situation that triggered our anger. This is perhaps one of the most challenging and liberating practices on the entire path. It is crucial to remember that this does not mean we are condoning a harmful action or letting ourselves be treated poorly. It is a practice for our own freedom. We recognize that the other person's harmful action, whatever it was, almost certainly sprang from their own dukkha, their own ignorance, fear, and pain. Happy, peaceful people do not go around hurting others. We extend the wish. May you also be free from the suffering that causes you to act in this way. May you also find peace. By doing this, we are performing a kind of spiritual alchemy. We are taking the poison of our own resentment and transforming it into the medicine of compassion. We are cutting the energetic cord of hatred that binds us to that person, a cord that harms us far more than it harms them. We are taking back our power and reclaiming our own peace. This very principle is beautifully captured in a story from the Buddha's life. A man came before him and began to hurl a torrent of insults, calling him a fraud and a fool. The Buddha listened patiently and silently until the man had exhausted himself. Then he asked him a simple question. "My friend, if you prepare a delicious meal as a gift for someone, and that person politely declines to accept it, to whom does that meal then belong?" The man, surprised, replied, "Well, it would belong to me, of course." The Buddha smiled gently and said, "Exactly so. Today you have offered me a gift of insults and anger. I have politely declined to accept it. To whom, then, does it belong?" The man was left speechless, suddenly understanding that his own anger was a poison he was trying to give away, a gift that was refused and so remained his own burden to carry. This is the ultimate freedom from anger. It is the realization that our inner peace does not have to be dependent on the actions or words of others. We do not have to accept the gifts of anger that others try to hand us. Through mindfulness, we can see the gift being offered. Through wisdom, we can understand the suffering of the person offering it. And through compassion, we can politely decline to take it into our own heart. Transforming anger is not a single event, but a continuous practice. It requires patience, courage, and a deep commitment to our own well-being. Each time we meet the fire of anger, not with more fire, but with the cool water of mindful, compassionate awareness, we weaken an old, destructive habit and strengthen a new one. We slowly rewire our brains for peace, transforming the destructive energy of anger into the warm, illuminating light of wisdom. As we learn to find peace with this fiery emotion, we are better equipped to face its close cousin, the cold, churning fog of anxiety. If the fiery energy of anger is a blazing wildfire, then its close cousin, anxiety, is a cold, thick fog. It rolls in silently, obscuring the path ahead, making every shadow seem like a monster, and filling the heart with a nameless, churning dread. While anger often fixates on a past injustice, anxiety is a ghost that haunts us from the future. It is the persistent, gnawing fear of what might happen. It is the mind's tragic habit of leaving the reality of the present moment to live in 1,000 imagined and often catastrophic future scenarios. And yet, while the threat is a phantom of the imagination, our body's reaction to it is terrifyingly real. Our nervous system, in its ancient wisdom, cannot tell the difference between a real tiger stalking us in the jungle and the imagined tiger of a failed presentation, a negative health diagnosis, or a social rejection. It floods our body with the same hormones of stress and fear, leaving us exhausted, tense, and perpetually on edge. The Buddhist approach to anxiety is not to fight this fog, for trying to fight a fog is a futile exercise. Instead, it is to learn to make friends with it, to understand its illusory nature, and to master the art of gently guiding our awareness out of the imaginary future and back to the solid, reliable ground of the present moment. To work with anxiety, we must first dissect its anatomy. At its core, anxiety is a narrative. Our minds are magnificent storytellers, but when left untrained, they have a strong penchant for writing horror stories. The engine of this storytelling machine is the simple, insidious question, what if? What if I lose my job? What if my partner leaves me? What if this strange physical sensation is a serious illness? What if people laugh at me? Each of these questions is a doorway into a fictional universe of disaster. Once we step through that door, the mind spins an elaborate and convincing tale, complete with vivid imagery, dialogue, and powerful emotional soundtracks. We get so caught up in this inner movie that we forget we are both the screenwriter and the sole audience member. This mental movie triggers a powerful physical response. The what-if story about a future threat activates the body's ancient fight-or-flight system. The adrenal glands pump cortisol and adrenaline into our bloodstream. Our heart rate accelerates, our breathing becomes shallow and rapid, our muscles tense up, and our digestive system shuts down. The body is preparing for a life or death struggle, but the battle is taking place entirely within the confines of our own skull. This creates a vicious feedback loop. The anxious thoughts create anxious physical sensations, and the anxious physical sensations then seem to validate the story, making it feel more urgent and real. This, in turn, fuels even more anxious thoughts. We become trapped in a self-perpetuating cycle of fear. This entire process is deeply connected to the principle of attachment. We feel anxious because we are attached to a particular outcome. We are attached to being safe, to being healthy, to being successful, to being liked. Anxiety is the friction that is generated when our desperate desire for control and certainty rubs up against the fundamental truth of Anikathat. Life is inherently uncontrollable and uncertain. So how do we break this cycle? How do we find our way out of the cold fog of an imagined future? We do it by returning home. Home is not a place, but a time, the present moment. The most effective antidote to the abstract fear of the future is the concrete reality of the present. The practice is one of grounding ourselves, of anchoring our awareness in the undeniable, tangible sensations of the here and now. The first and most immediate anchor is, as always, the breath. Anxious breathing is typically shallow, rapid, and located high in the chest. This type of breathing itself sends a signal of panic to the brain. We can consciously interrupt this by practicing slow, deep, diaphragmatic breathing. You can place a hand on your belly and feel it rise gently on the in-breath and fall on the out-breath. Taking just a few of these slow, deep breaths sends a powerful message to the nervous system. The battle is over. You are safe now. You can stand down. This simple physiological shift can begin to quiet the storm of anxious thoughts. From the breath, we can expand our awareness to the whole body and the world of our senses. This is the practice of grounding. When you feel your mind spiraling into a what-if story, you can deliberately bring your attention to the feeling of your feet on the floor. Really feel it. Feel the texture of your socks, the pressure on your heels and toes, the solid, reliable support of the earth beneath you. In the world of anxious thought, everything is unstable and threatening. In the world of your feet on the floor, everything is solid and still. You are here. You are grounded. From there, You can engage all of your senses in a simple but powerful exercise. You can silently name 5 things you can see in the room around you. Just name them without judgment: the lamp, the book, the window, the cup, the chair. Then name 4 things you can feel: the fabric of my shirt against my skin, the smoothness of the table, the warmth in my hands, the chair supporting my back. Then listen for 3 things you can hear: the hum of the refrigerator, a distant siren, the sound of my own breathing. Then 2 things you can smell, and finally 1 thing you can taste. This practice acts like an emergency brake for the runaway train of anxious thought. It forcibly pulls your awareness out of the fictional narrative of the future and slams it into the undeniable, non-threatening reality of the present moment. In the present moment, the tiger is almost never there. In the present moment, we are almost always okay. A common and understandable objection arises here. But I need to think about the future. I have to plan, to prepare, to be responsible. This is, of course, true. The key is to learn to distinguish between skillful, useful planning and repetitive, useless worry. Skillful planning is a present moment activity. It is calm and rational. It asks, what is one concrete, practical step I can take right now to prepare for that future event? It is solution-oriented. Once a plan is made or a single step is taken, the mind can relax, knowing it has done what it can. Useless worry, which is anxiety, is the opposite. It is not solution-oriented, it is problem-oriented. It does not lead to action, but to paralysis. It is the mind spinning its wheels in the mud, replaying the same catastrophic scenarios over and over again without moving forward. The practice is to notice when our thinking has tipped over from the first category into the second. When we catch ourselves worrying, we don't need to scold ourselves. We can gently acknowledge the worry. Ah, the mind is worrying again. Thank it for its misguided attempt to keep us safe, and then deliberately guide our focus back to the present. What is actually true, right here, right now? And what is one small thing I can actually do? Ultimately, making friends with anxiety involves a gentle but radical acceptance of uncertainty. Our desire for a predictable, controllable future is a primary source of our anxiety. We want to know for sure that everything will be okay. But the law of Anika teaches us that life is inherently unpredictable and uncontrollable. True peace is not found in achieving certainty, which is impossible, but in increasing our tolerance for uncertainty. It is about finding security not in a guaranteed outcome, but in our own ability to meet whatever arises in the present moment with awareness and kindness. There is an old Zen story where an anxious student asks his master, "Master, what will happen to me in the future?" The master calmly replies, "I do not know." The student is shocked. "You are an enlightened master. How can you not know?" The master smiles and says, "Because the future has not yet been my student." Our true strength is not in predicting the future, but in inhabiting the present. It is as if we are told we must carry the great burden of tomorrow's challenges, and we buckle under the imagined weight. But the wisdom of the path reminds us, you only have to carry today's burden with today's strength, and today's strength is always enough for today. Anxiety is a story we tell ourselves about a future that is not real. The practice is to become a devoted reader of a different book, the simple, true, and ever-unfolding story of this present moment. Finding this stability in the midst of difficult emotions like anger and anxiety requires a quiet, inner resilience, a quality that is born not from force, but from the deep, unwavering power of patience. Having explored the turbulent inner states of anger and anxiety and learned the gentle arts of transforming them, we now arrive at a quality that underpins our ability to work with all of life's challenges. It is a virtue often misunderstood in our modern world, a quiet strength that is frequently mistaken for weakness. This is the profound power of patience. In a culture that worships speed, efficiency, and instant gratification, patience can seem like a quaint or passive characteristic. We are taught to be go-getters, to make things happen, to demand results now. The idea of patiently enduring something can feel like giving up or being a doormat. But from the perspective of inner transformation, patience, known as shanti in Sanskrit, is one of the great perfections of the heart. It is not a sign of weakness, but a hallmark of immense inner strength. It is the courage to remain peaceful and clear in the face of conditions we cannot change. It is the wisdom to give processes the time they need to unfold naturally. Patience is the spacious, unshakable mind that allows the storms of life to pass through without becoming the storm itself. To truly understand this power, we must first distinguish it from its passive cousin, suppression or mere tolerance. When we simply tolerate a difficult situation, we are often just gritting our teeth and bearing it. Internally, we are a cauldron of resentment, frustration, and resistance. We are using willpower to keep a lid on our reactivity, but the pressure is building. This is a state of silent war with reality. It is tense, constricted, and exhausting. It is not true patience. Kshanti, on the other hand, is born not of willpower, but of wisdom and acceptance. It is a state of active, courageous presence. When faced with a difficult situation, the patient mind does not deny the feeling of pain or frustration. It acknowledges it with mindfulness. Ah, this is a feeling of frustration. This is unpleasant. But it makes a conscious, wise choice not to add the second arrow of mental commentary and reaction. It accepts the reality of the present moment, however unpleasant, without creating an inner war against it. The energy of patience is not tense and brittle. It is spacious, open, and resilient. It is the quality of a mighty oak tree that can bend in the wind without breaking, while a rigid, unyielding structure might snap. Suppression is resistance. Patience is a wise and powerful embrace. We can cultivate this profound strength in three primary arenas of our lives. The first, and often the most challenging, is learning to be patient with ourselves. We embark on a path of self-improvement or spiritual practice with great enthusiasm, but we want results immediately. When we find ourselves getting angry after we've resolved to be calm, or feeling anxious after we've practiced mindfulness, we become frustrated. We turn on ourselves with a harsh inner critic. I'm no good at this. I'll never change. I'm a failure. This impatience with our own journey is a subtle but potent form of self-violence. It is like a gardener who plants a seed and then comes back every hour, digging it up to see if it has grown yet, and in doing so, ensures that it never will. The spiritual path is not a weekend workshop. It is the long, slow, and beautiful work of a lifetime. There will be periods of rapid growth, and there will be fallow seasons. There will be steps forward and steps backward. Patience with ourselves means treating ourselves with the same kindness and encouragement we would offer a dear friend learning a difficult new skill. It is celebrating the small victories, being gentle with our perceived failures, and trusting that with steady, sincere effort, growth is inevitable. True self-compassion is the fertile soil in which this kind of patience can grow. The second arena is learning to be patient with other people. So much of our daily frustration arises from our impatience with others. We get annoyed because they are driving too slowly, because they don't understand our instructions, because they hold different opinions, or because their habits and behaviors don't meet our personal standards. At the root of this impatience is always a set of rigid expectations. We have a fixed idea of how others should be, and we suffer when they fail to conform to our script. The practice of patience with others is a direct application of compassion and wisdom. When we feel impatience arising, we can pause and remember that the other person is not a character in our play. They are the main character in their own, with their own complex history, their own struggles, and their own conditioning. Their actions are not designed to inconvenience us. They are the result of their own causes and conditions, their own dukkha. Seeing this allows our hearts to soften. We realize that our impatience and anger do nothing to help the situation and only add more stress and suffering to the world and to our own mind. To be patient with another is a profound gift. It is to offer them the space to be who they are, a space of non-judgmental acceptance. And in offering this gift to them, we give an even greater gift to ourselves, the gift of a peaceful and unperturbed heart. The third arena is learning to be patient with the flow of life itself. We are conditioned to believe that effort should produce immediate results. We work hard and we expect a quick promotion. We start a new diet and we expect to see changes in the mirror the next day. We begin a meditation practice and we expect to achieve instant enlightenment. Life, however, operates on its own organic timetable, not our demanding one. The law of karma is real, but its fruits do not always ripen immediately. Some seeds take seasons to grow. To be impatient with life is to be in a constant state of frustration with this natural unfolding. It is the desire to harvest in the spring. Patience with life is the wisdom of the farmer. The farmer knows he cannot force a seed to grow. His job is to choose a good seed, to prepare the soil well, to provide water and sunlight, and to protect the young plant from weeds. He does his part with diligence and care, and then he trusts the process. He knows that if he has created the right conditions, the plant will grow and bear fruit in its own good time. In the same way, our task on the path is to diligently create the causes and conditions for peace and wisdom, to practice mindfulness, to cultivate kindness, to live ethically, and then to let go of our attachment to the timeline. We trust that with steady practice, the results will come. There is a simple story that captures the essence of this patient, persistent effort. A man in a dry land was desperate for water. He decided to dig a well. He chose a spot and began to dig. The work was hard and sweaty. After digging down several feet, he felt a surge of impatience. "There's no water here," he thought. "I must have chosen the wrong spot." He abandoned the hole and moved to another part of his land, where he began digging again. Once more, after a few feet, his impatience took over, and he gave up. He repeated this process all over his property, until his land was pockmarked with dozens of shallow, useless holes, and he was still as thirsty as ever, having exhausted all his energy. A wise and patient man, facing the same problem, chose one promising spot. He began to dig. He knew the water was deep. Some days the digging was easy, and some days the ground was hard as rock. Sometimes he felt discouraged, but he remembered his purpose, and he kept digging. He went deeper and deeper, past the point where the impatient man had given up, and then deeper still. And finally, after long and persistent effort in that one spot, his shovel broke through into cool, wet soil, and a spring of fresh, life-giving water began to fill the hole. This is the nature of our practice. The shallow holes are the dabbling, the flitting from one technique to another, always looking for a quick fix and giving up when it doesn't appear. The deep well is the committed, patient practice of this path. Patience is the strength that allows us to keep digging, to stay with the practice through periods of dryness and difficulty, trusting in the wisdom of the path. It is the quiet, steady, and courageous quality of the heart that allows us to endure hardship without breaking. It is the calm confidence that if we tend the garden of our mind with diligence and care, the flowers of peace and the fruits of wisdom will surely grow. Patience creates the stable, fertile ground in which all other virtues can flourish, especially the beautiful and selfless quality of finding joy in the good fortune of others. Having cultivated the strength of patience, creating a stable ground within our hearts, we are now ready to explore one of the most beautiful, joyful, and perhaps most challenging of all, the heart practices. We have walked the path of metta, the universal loving kindness that wishes all beings to be happy. We have explored the path of karuna, the tender compassion that wishes all beings to be free from suffering. Now, we arrive at the third of these four divine abodes, mudita. Mudita is often translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy. It is the practice of genuinely rejoicing in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. If metta is the heart's ability to offer warmth, and karuna is its ability to be with sorrow, mudita is its ability to dance at a celebration. It is a selfless joy, a happiness that we feel for others, not because their success benefits us in any way, but simply because they are happy. In a world that is often driven by competition, comparison, and a deep-seated fear of not having enough, the practice of mudita is a revolutionary act. It is a direct antidote to the poison of envy and jealousy, and it is the key to unlocking a source of happiness that is both boundless and completely free. To truly appreciate the radiant light of mudita, we must first be willing to look into the dark and constricted shadow of its opposite, envy. Envy, known as Isa in the Pali language, is that painful, bitter feeling that arises when we witness the success of another person. It is the pang in our chest when a friend announces a wonderful new relationship, the subtle resentment when a colleague receives praise, the secret dissatisfaction when we see others enjoying a life that we desire. We may not act on it, we may hide it behind a forced smile and polite words of congratulations, but if we are honest with ourselves, we know this feeling well. It is a heavy, isolating, and deeply painful state of mind. To heal it, we must understand its roots. At its core, envy is born from two fundamental delusions. The first is the delusion of the separate self, the ego that is constantly engaged in a game of comparison. The ego's sense of worth is not absolute, it is relative. It constantly asks, how am I doing compared to them? Am I better or worse? Do I have more or less? From this comparative viewpoint, another person's success can feel like a direct threat to our own standing. Their victory can feel like our defeat. Their light shines a spotlight on our own perceived shadows, and we resent them for it. The second, and perhaps deeper, delusion is the scarcity mindset. This is the unconscious belief that happiness, success, love, and good fortune are finite resources, like a single pie that everyone is fighting over. If someone else gets a large slice, the scarcity mindset tells us there is now less left for me. This belief creates a world of rivals, a zero-sum game where we can only win if someone else loses. We become hoarders of happiness, suspicious of others' good fortune, and secretly wishing for their downfall because we mistakenly believe their gain is our loss. This state of envy is a form of self-torture. When we are envious, we cannot enjoy our own blessings because we are fixated on the blessings of others. We are trapped in a prison of resentment, looking out through the bars at a world we believe is unfairly rewarding everyone but us. The irony is that the other person's success is not what is causing our suffering. Our suffering is caused entirely by our own averse reaction to it, by the second arrow of our own bitter thoughts. Envy is a poison that we drink, foolishly hoping it will harm the other person, but it only corrodes our own heart, making us small, bitter, and lonely. Mudita is the powerful and liberating antidote to this poison. It is the conscious cultivation of the opposite state of mind, the abundance mindset. Mudita understands a profound truth. Happiness is not a finite resource. It is not a pie. A better metaphor is a candle flame. If you have a lit candle, you can use its flame to light 1,000 other candles. Does your own flame diminish? Not in the slightest. In fact, the only result is that the total amount of light and warmth in the room increases exponentially. Rejoicing in another person's happiness is exactly like this. When you use your heart to celebrate their joy, your own joy is not lessened. On the contrary, your heart is illuminated by the very act of rejoicing. You have increased the total sum of happiness in the world, and you get to feel that increase within your own being. This insight offers a radical and joyful hack into the nature of happiness. Most of us operate on a very limited happiness model. We feel happy only when good things happen to us, when we get a promotion, when we fall in love, when we go on vacation. These events are wonderful, but they are relatively infrequent and subject to the law of impermanence. Our personal supply of happiness triggers is limited. But what if you could learn to derive joy from the happiness of every other being around you? Suddenly, your opportunities for happiness become infinite. Your friend's successful project is no longer a source of envy, but a source of your joy. Your neighbor's beautiful garden becomes a source of your joy. The laughter of children playing in a park becomes a source of your joy. Even the simple, contented look on a stranger's face becomes a reason for your own heart to feel light. By cultivating mudita, you are no longer limited to your own small, personal well of happiness. You learn to drink from the vast, flowing river of joy that exists all around you all the time. Your heart becomes a boundless field, capable of harvesting happiness from every direction. Like all the other heart practices, mudita is a bhavana, a mental cultivation. It is a skill that we can develop with patient practice. It does not mean pretending to be happy for someone when you are feeling the sting of envy. The practice begins with mindfulness. We first notice and acknowledge the feeling of envy without judgment. Ah, envy is here. This tightness, this bitterness, this is the feeling of envy. We hold that feeling with the same compassionate awareness we would bring to anger or anxiety. Then, we can make a conscious choice to gently pivot the mind. We can start the formal cultivation of mudita. The practice can begin with ourselves. Before we can genuinely rejoice for others, it is helpful to counter the feeling of lack within ourselves. We can practice self-appreciation, a form of mudita for our own being. You can reflect on your own good qualities, your own efforts, your own past successes, no matter how small. You can appreciate the simple good fortune of having a body that breathes and a mind that can be aware. You can say to yourself, "May I appreciate and rejoice in my own capacity for goodness. May I appreciate the blessings in my life." This practice helps to create a foundation of inner contentment, making it easier to celebrate others. Next, just as with metta, we start with an easy object. Bring to mind a person you love dearly, a close friend or family member. Now, bring to mind a specific success or moment of joy in their life. Perhaps they graduated, got married, recovered from an illness, or achieved a lifelong dream. Picture their happy, smiling face. Feel the warmth of their joy. Now, instead of just observing, consciously participate in that joy. Let your own heart smile with them. You can use phrases to guide your mind. "My friend, I am so happy for you. I rejoice in your good fortune. May your happiness and success continue. May your joy never fade." Feel the genuine warmth of these wishes in your own heart. Notice how it feels to celebrate someone without any thought of yourself. After practicing with a loved one, you can expand the circle to a neutral person and then to the most challenging object, a person for whom you have felt envy or rivalry. This is the advanced practice, the true alchemy of the heart. Bring this person to mind. Acknowledge the feeling of envy if it arises. Then, begin to look for something you can genuinely appreciate about their success. Perhaps you can appreciate their hard work, their dedication, their talent, or the courage it took to achieve what they did. You can start with a simple thought. "You have worked hard for this. I can appreciate that effort." This small shift begins to break the spell of envy. From there, you might move to a more direct wish. May you enjoy the fruits of your success. May you be happy. This is not easy. It requires courage and humility. But every time you are able to make this shift, you are liberating your own heart from a bitter prison. You are transforming a rival into a fellow human being and resentment into a feeling of peace. Finally, you can expand this feeling of appreciative joy to all beings everywhere. You can think, "May all beings who are experiencing happiness continue to be happy. May all who have achieved success enjoy the fruits of their labor. May all who are feeling joy be filled with it. May the sum of joy in the world increase." This practice transforms the heart, making it vast, generous, and light. There is a beautiful description in Buddhist cosmology of the Deva realms, or heavenly worlds. In some of these blissful realms, the beings are said to have bodies made of light. Their radiance is not self-generated. The brightness of each being's light is said to be a direct reflection of how much they rejoice in the happiness and good qualities of the other heavenly beings. The more mudita they feel for others, the more luminous they themselves become. This is a perfect metaphor for the practice. Our own inner light, our own sense of happiness and well-being, increases in direct proportion to our ability to celebrate the light in others. Envy dims our light. Mudita makes it shine brilliantly. The feeling of envy is heavy, contracted, bitter, and cold. The feeling of mudita is light, expansive, sweet, and warm. It is the heart taking flight. It is a profoundly joyful way to live, a rebellion against the cynical, critical mind. It is the heart's resounding yes to the goodness and happiness of the world. As we learn to cultivate this boundless joy, alongside loving kindness and compassion, we see the need for a final, stabilizing quality of vast, peaceful spaciousness that can hold all of life's joys and sorrows with unshakable balance. This is the quality of equanimity. As our hearts open through the practices of loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy, we begin to feel a new sense of warmth and connection to the world. Yet, as this light grows brighter, it often illuminates old dark corners of the heart where we still hold on to knots of pain and bitterness. We may find that while we can offer goodwill to strangers, there are certain people or certain memories from our past that remain barricaded behind a wall of resentment. This is the heavy burden of unforgiveness. We often believe that holding on to a grudge, that refusing to forgive, is an act of power. We think we are punishing the person who wronged us by keeping our anger alive. But the profound wisdom of the path reveals the tragic truth. The prison of resentment has only one inmate, and it is ourselves. To hold a grudge is to grasp a burning coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Forgiveness, then, is not a gift we give to the other person. It is not a favor we bestow upon our enemy. It is the ultimate act of self-love, the courageous and liberating gift of freedom that we give to ourselves. Before we can walk the path of forgiveness, it is crucial to clear away the thicket of misunderstandings that so often block the way. There are several things that forgiveness is not, and understanding this can release the resistance we feel toward it. First, forgiveness is not condoning. It does not mean that what happened was okay. It is not saying that the harmful action was acceptable or justified. You can forgive someone completely while still acknowledging with crystal clarity that what they did was wrong, destructive, and deeply hurtful. Forgiveness separates the person, who is a complex being likely acting from their own suffering and delusion, from the harmful deed itself. You can forgive the person while still condemning the act. Second, forgiveness is not forgetting. The popular phrase, forgive and forget, is misleading and often impossible. A deep wound may leave a scar, and the memory of that wound may always be a part of your life's story. Forgiveness does not mean erasing the memory. It means healing the emotional charge that the memory carries. It is the process by which the memory ceases to be a source of active pain. The scar may remain as a reminder of a lesson learned, but it no longer throbs with the hot poison of resentment. The wound has closed, and it no longer has the power to infect your present moment happiness. Third, forgiveness is not necessarily reconciliation. This is a vital distinction. Forgiveness is a purely internal process. It happens within your own heart and mind, and it requires nothing from the other person. You can forgive someone who has passed away, someone you will never see again, or someone who is completely unrepentant. Reconciliation, on the other hand, is an interpersonal process. It is the act of rebuilding a relationship, and it requires trust, communication, and, most importantly, changed behavior from the person who caused the harm. In many cases, reconciliation may not be possible or even advisable. Sometimes, the wisest and most self-compassionate course of action is to forgive someone completely while also making the clear decision to keep them at a healthy distance or to remove them from your life altogether. Forgiveness is about cleaning your own inner house, regardless of who is or is not invited to visit. Finally, forgiveness is not a sign of weakness. It is often perceived as letting the other person get away with it. This could not be further from the truth. Holding on to anger and resentment means you are allowing another person's past actions to continue to control your present emotions and dictate your state of mind. You are giving them free rent in your head. Forgiveness is the ultimate act of taking back your power. It is the declaration that you will no longer allow the events of the past to poison the well of your present peace. It is an act of immense emotional strength and profound self-respect. Understanding this, how do we actually go about the work of forgiving? It is not a switch that we can flip with a single decision. Forgiveness is a process, a gradual unclenching of a fist that may have been tight for years. It is a journey that requires patience, courage, and great compassion for ourselves. The first step is to fully and honestly acknowledge the pain. We cannot heal a wound that we pretend does not exist. We must give ourselves permission to feel the full spectrum of our hurt, the anger, the sadness, the grief, the sense of betrayal. To deny or suppress these feelings is to bury the hot coal, where it will continue to smolder and burn us from the inside. We must be willing to sit with the pain of the first arrow without immediately judging it or trying to fix it. The second step is to clearly understand the cost of not forgiving. We must become intimately familiar with the prison we have built for ourselves. We can ask, what is this resentment doing to me? How does it feel in my body? Is it making me tense, tired, or ill? How is it affecting my other relationships? Is it making me cynical and untrusting? Is it stealing my joy? When we see with mindful clarity that the burden of our resentment is heavy, painful, and counterproductive, we naturally develop the motivation to put it down. The third and most transformative step is to actively cultivate compassion for the person who hurt us. This is the key that turns the lock of our resentment. As we have practiced with Karuna, we make an intentional effort to see the suffering in the other person. We reflect on the profound truth that happy, peaceful, and wise people do not intentionally harm others. Harmful actions are almost always born from a place of deep inner pain, fear, ignorance, or confusion. We don't need to know the specifics of their story. We just need to understand the universal principle that their actions were likely a manifestation of their own dukkha. This does not excuse their behavior, but it depersonalizes it. We begin to see that their action was less a malicious attack on us and more a tragic expression of their own suffering spilling over. This shift in perspective begins to soften the hard edges of our anger. With this foundation, we can then undertake the conscious act of releasing the burden. This can be done as a quiet meditation. You can bring the image of the person to mind, acknowledge the pain once more, and then you can silently in your own heart offer them the gift of your forgiveness. You might say, I have carried the pain of what you did for long enough. For the sake of my own peace, for the sake of my own heart's freedom, I now release you. I release this burden of anger and resentment. I forgive you. You may need to do this hundreds of times. The habit of resentment is strong. The mind will want to pick the burden back up again. Each time it does, you can gently and patiently choose to put it down again. It is a practice of continuous, compassionate release. In this journey, we often discover that the hardest person to forgive is ourselves. We carry immense guilt and shame for our own past mistakes, for the times we hurt others, for the opportunities we missed, for the ways we failed to live up to our own ideals. The process here is exactly the same. We must acknowledge the harm we caused, understand the ignorance or pain that motivated our past self, and offer that past version of ourselves the same profound gift of compassion. We can say, to the person I was then, who acted out of fear and confusion, I see your suffering. I forgive you. I release you from the burden of my own self-recrimination. Without this crucial step of self-forgiveness, our hearts can never be truly free. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly captures the folly of carrying our resentments. Two monks were on a long pilgrimage. They came to a wide, rushing river where a young woman stood, afraid to cross. Without a word, the older of the two monks hoisted the woman onto his shoulders, waded through the turbulent water, and gently set her down on the opposite bank. The two monks then continued their journey in silence. Hours passed. The younger monk grew more and more agitated, his face a mask of disapproval. Finally, miles down the road, he could contain himself no longer. He burst out, "Brother, how could you do that? You know our vows forbid us from even touching a woman." It was a serious transgression. The older monk looked at him with a calm, gentle smile. "Brother," he said, "I put that woman down by the riverbank hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This is the question that the practice of forgiveness asks of us. The painful events of the past are over. They exist now only as memories, as ghosts in our minds. Yet we choose to carry them, to let these ghosts weigh us down and dictate our present happiness. Forgiveness is the simple, courageous, and liberating act of putting the burden down right here on the riverbank of the present moment. It is about choosing to no longer carry what is not ours to hold. It is sweeping our own hearts clean of the dust and poison of yesterday, so that we may live with freedom, lightness, and peace today. Having journeyed through the great heart practices and the deep inner work of forgiveness, we might be tempted to believe that the spiritual path is an endeavor separate from our ordinary lives. We often construct a false division in our minds. Over here is our spiritual life, the 20 minutes of morning meditation, the book we read, the philosophy we contemplate. And over there, completely separate, is our real life, the demanding job, the crying children, the endless errands, the sink full of dirty dishes. We tell ourselves that we will truly get to our practice after the chaos of real life is dealt with. We imagine enlightenment as a distant, exotic destination, a serene mountaintop far removed from the messy, mundane reality of our daily existence. But the profound wisdom of the Zen tradition offers a radical and liberating alternative. It teaches us that the path to awakening is not an escape from our ordinary life, but a total and unconditional immersion in it. The sacred is not hidden on a remote mountaintop. It is woven into the very fabric of the profane, waiting to be discovered in the most unlikely of places. The kitchen sink, the daily commute, the simple act of breathing. There is a famous Zen saying that beautifully encapsulates this truth. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. On the surface, this sounds anticlimactic, even disappointing. We imagine enlightenment as a dramatic transformation that will free us from all worldly concerns. But the wisdom of this saying is its profound subtlety. It points to the fact that the outer circumstances of our lives may not change at all. The great shift is entirely internal. Before enlightenment, we chop the wood while our mind is lost in 1,000 other places. We are worrying about tomorrow's anxieties or replaying yesterday's arguments. The act of chopping is a burden, a chore, a mindless means to an end. We carry the water from the well, but our mind is complaining about the weight of the buckets and fantasizing about the moment the task is over. The body is performing the action, but the spirit is absent. We are not truly living these moments. We are merely enduring them on the way to something better. After enlightenment, the external reality remains the same. The wood still needs to be chopped. The water still needs to be carried. There are still meals to be cooked and floors to be swept. But the quality of our awareness has been revolutionized. When we chop wood, we are fully present with the chopping. We feel the weight of the axe in our hands. We see the texture of the wood grain. We hear the sharp crack as it splits. The mind is not in the past or the future. It is right here, united with the action. The chopping is no longer a chore. It is a meditation. It is life itself, unfolding in its fullness. When we carry the water, we feel the pressure of the yoke on our shoulders, the sway of the buckets, the sensation of our feet on the path. The act of carrying the water is no longer an obstacle to our peace. It is the very path to our peace. Enlightenment is not about changing what we do. It is about radically changing how we do it. It is about bringing a total, loving, and undivided attention to whatever is right in front of us, discovering the sacred within the ordinary. This is not just a lofty ideal. It is an intensely practical approach to life. We can transform our entire day into a seamless meditative practice by consciously bringing our awareness to the mundane activities we usually perform on autopilot. Let us take the simple, everyday task of washing the dishes. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh spoke beautifully about this. He observed that we often rush through washing the dishes, seeing it as an unpleasant task to be finished as quickly as possible so that we can get to the real reward, like a cup of tea or a piece of dessert. But, he wisely pointed out, if we are incapable of being present and alive while washing the dishes, we will be equally incapable of being present and alive while drinking the tea. While drinking the tea, our minds will already be racing ahead to the next thing and the next. We will wash away our entire lives in this state of perpetual future chasing. The alternative is to wash the dishes as if it were the most important thing in the world. You can stand at the sink and begin by taking a few conscious breaths. Then, you can engage all your senses. Feel the warmth of the water on your hands. Notice the spectrum of colors in the soap bubbles. Hear the gentle sound of the water running and the clink of the plates. Feel the smooth, clean surface of a dish after you have washed it. Your purpose is not just to get the dishes clean, but to be fully alive and present during the time you are washing them. The dishes are not an enemy to be conquered. They are a partner in your mindfulness practice. The 10 minutes you spend washing dishes can be a profound period of meditation, a sacred ritual that cleanses not just the plates, but your mind itself. This same principle can be applied to everything. When you walk from your car to your office, you can practice mindful walking. Instead of being lost in a fog of thoughts about the upcoming meeting, you can bring your attention to the simple, physical sensation of walking. Feel your feet making contact with the ground. Notice the rhythm of your body, the feeling of the air on your skin. You are not just walking to get to your desk. You are simply walking. Each step can be an arrival in the present moment. When you eat a meal, instead of scrolling on your phone or watching television, you can practice mindful eating. You can take a moment to look at your food, appreciating the colors and the textures. You can acknowledge all the causes and conditions that brought this food to your plate: sun, the rain, the earth, the farmer, the truck driver. You can chew each bite slowly, savoring the explosion of flavors, truly tasting what you are eating. This transforms a mechanical act of refueling into a deep experience of nourishment and gratitude. When you are listening to a friend, instead of formulating your reply, you can practice deep listening, offering them the full, undivided gift of your presence. When we begin to practice in this way, the artificial wall between our spiritual life and our real life begins to dissolve. The world ceases to be a distraction from our practice. The world becomes our practice. The monastery is no longer a special building on a faraway hill. It is your kitchen, your office, your car. The curriculum for your awakening is whatever is happening right now. Waiting in line at the post office is no longer a frustrating waste of time. It is a precious opportunity to practice patience and to observe the arising and passing of your own feelings. Being stuck in traffic is no longer a source of rage. It is an opportunity to practice metta for all the other drivers who are also stuck and suffering. A difficult conversation with a family member is no longer something to be dreaded. It is a laboratory for practicing right speech and compassion. Life, in all its messy, unpredictable, beautiful, and mundane glory, becomes the meditation hall. There is no moment that is not an opportunity to be awake, to be kind, to be present. This is not about adding another task to our already overburdened schedules. It is about changing the quality of our awareness in the tasks we are already doing. It is about discovering that freedom is not found by escaping our lives, but by showing up for them more fully than ever before. Enlightenment is not a spectacular supernova event that happens in the future. It is the quiet, steady, and courageous accumulation of present moments. Live with an awake and tender heart. It is discovering the extraordinary hidden within the folds of the ordinary. And by learning to be present with the small, ordinary details of our lives, we cultivate the strength, clarity, and courage to be present with the greatest, most profound, and most ordinary event of all, the reality of our own mortality. We have journeyed through the landscape of the human heart, learning to bring the light of mindfulness into the ordinary, sacred moments of our lives. We have seen how the simple act of washing a dish or walking down a street can become a gateway to presence and peace. This practice of inhabiting our lives fully, of showing up for the small details, prepares us for the larger questions and the greater challenges. Now, with a heart that has been softened by compassion and steadied by practice, we turn our attention to the one great certainty of life, the destination toward which we are all walking, step by step, breath by breath. We turn to face the reality of death. In our modern culture, this is perhaps the last great taboo. Death is treated as a medical failure, a grim secret to be hidden away in hospitals and spoken of only in hushed tones and gentle euphemisms. We see it as the enemy, the ultimate tragedy, the absolute end. We spend immense energy denying it, ignoring it, and distracting ourselves from its inevitable approach. But the path of wisdom invites us to do something radical. It asks us to stop running. It asks us to turn around. with gentle courage and to look deeply into the face of our own mortality. This practice, known as Maranasati, or mindfulness of death, is not a morbid or pessimistic exercise designed to make us fearful or depressed. It is, in fact, one of the most powerful and life-affirming contemplations we can undertake. It is a practice that has the power to shatter our complacency, clarify our deepest values, and awaken us to the profound, breathtaking preciousness of every single moment we are alive. The purpose of contemplating death is not to become obsessed with dying. It is to be shocked into the urgent and joyful task of living fully. To understand why this practice is so transformative, we must first understand why we fear death so intensely. Our fear is not a single, simple thing, but a complex knot of our deepest anxieties. At its very core is the fear of annihilation. The ego, our deeply ingrained sense of being a solid, separate, continuous I, is terrified by the prospect of its own non-existence. Having spent a lifetime building, defending, and identifying with this self, the thought of it all simply vanishing is the ultimate horror. This is where our practice of seeing through the illusion of the self, of understanding anatta, becomes our greatest solace. If we begin to see that the self is not a static entity, but a dynamic, ever-changing process, then its dissolution becomes less like a shattering and more like a natural continuation of the flow. Another layer of fear is the fear of the unknown. The rational mind craves certainty and control, and death represents the ultimate loss of control and the entry into the greatest of all mysteries. We also fear the process of dying itself, the potential for pain and dependency. And, of course, there is the profound sadness of separation, the pain of leaving behind everyone and everything we hold dear, and the regret of unfinished business, of words left unsaid, of a life not lived to its full potential. This deep, multi-layered fear is the engine that drives so much of our unskillful behavior. We frantically accumulate wealth and possessions, as if building a fortress of things could somehow protect us from impermanence. We chase fame and status, hoping to create a legacy that will allow our name to outlive our body. We immerse ourselves in an endless stream of distractions, entertainment, noise, and busyness, doing anything to avoid having a quiet moment where the truth of our mortality might whisper to us. This constant running creates a life that is shallow, anxious, and fundamentally out of touch with reality. We live as though we have all the time in the world, and in doing so, we waste the precious, finite time we actually have. The practice of Maranasati is the antidote to this denial. It is a gentle but persistent turning of the mind toward the truth. It is not about imagining gruesome details, but about holding a series of clear, sober reflections in the mind. In the classical tradition, there are 9 such contemplations, but we can distill their essence into a life-changing inquiry. We begin by reflecting on the absolute certainty of death. We can look at all of history, at every great king, every brilliant artist, every loving parent, every living creature that has ever existed. All have died. We can look around us at our friends, our family, and our own reflection in the mirror. We are all subject to this same universal law. Death is not a possibility, it is an inevitability. It is not a personal failure or a tragedy that befalls only some. It is the natural culmination of being born. Holding this truth not as a grim fact, but as a simple, sober reality begins to dissolve our sense of personal injustice. Next, we reflect on the complete uncertainty of the time of our death. While death itself is certain, its timing is the great unknown. We may live for another 50 years, or we may not live to see the end of this day. We walk around with the unconscious assumption that we have a full future ahead of us, but this is a pure fabrication of the mind. Accidents happen. Illnesses arise unexpectedly. The thread of life is fragile. To contemplate this is not to cultivate panic, but to awaken a sense of precious urgency. If this day were our last, how would we live it? Would we waste it on petty squabbles, mindless distractions, or fear? Or would we fill it with kindness, with forgiveness, with presence, with love? We can then reflect on what truly matters at the moment of death. At that final hour, all the things we spend our lives chasing will be rendered useless. Our wealth cannot buy us another minute. Our social status will not accompany us. Our physical appearance will fade. Our possessions will be distributed to others. There is a powerful story of Alexander the Great, who, upon his deathbed, made a final request. He asked that when his coffin was carried to its final resting place, his hands be left dangling outside, empty and open for all to see. He wanted to demonstrate to the world that even he, the most powerful and wealthy conqueror on earth, was leaving with absolutely nothing. This contemplation is a radical reorientation of our values. It asks us, if all of this is temporary, what is of true and lasting worth? The Buddhist answer is clear. At the moment of death, the only thing that truly belongs to us, the only thing that follows us, is our karma. The quality of our own consciousness, shaped by the wholesome and unwholesome intentions we have cultivated throughout our lives, is our only real possession. The love we have given, the compassion we have shown, the wisdom we have developed, these are the only treasures that death cannot touch. This realization naturally leads to the final contemplation. Given all of this, what is the most skillful way to live? The inescapable conclusion is that the most meaningful and urgent use of our precious, fleeting human life is to purify our hearts and minds, to live ethically, and to be a source of benefit for ourselves and others. The contemplation of death becomes the most powerful motivation for walking the spiritual path. This practice can be woven gently into our daily lives. Upon waking, we can take a single breath and reflect, I am fortunate to be alive today. Many who were alive yesterday are not. As my time is uncertain, I will endeavor to live this day with awareness and a kind heart. This sets a tone of gratitude and purpose for the entire day. At night, we can reflect, this day has passed, and my life is one day shorter. Have I used it wisely? This encourages honest self-assessment and renews our resolve for tomorrow. This practice is made less fearful when we understand the Buddhist perspective on what death is. It is seen not as a final annihilation, but as a profound transition. The stream of our consciousness, propelled by the force of our karmic tendencies, is not extinguished with the last breath. A helpful analogy is that of one candle flame lighting another. The flame on the second candle is not identical to the flame on the first, but it is not completely different either. It is a direct continuation, conditioned by the first flame. In the same way, the karmic energy of our consciousness stream continues, taking on a new form in a new life, in conditions that are a reflection of the karma we have created. For those uncomfortable with the idea of rebirth, one can think of it through the lens of the conservation of energy. The energy of our actions, the love, the anger, the kindness we put out into the world does not simply vanish. It continues to ripple outwards, transforming and conditioning the world long after our physical body is gone. Seeing death as a transition rather than a full stop can profoundly soften the terror of non-existence. Ultimately, the contemplation of death is the ultimate practice of letting go. It is the training in non-attachment to the one thing we are most attached to, our own life. By learning to hold our own life with a lighter grip, we become free. Free from the fear that makes us small and selfish. Free from the denial that keeps us living a shallow, distracted existence. Free to be daring, to be loving, to be authentic. When we make peace with our own mortality, we can finally begin to live. The trivialities that used to occupy our minds fall away. The grudges we held seem utterly pointless. The pursuit of fleeting pleasures is seen for the empty game that it is. Our priorities become crystal clear. We are filled with an immense sense of gratitude for the simple miracle of being here at all, for the feeling of the sun on our skin, for the taste of clean water, for the sound of a loved one's voice, for the astonishing gift of this very breath. The purpose of looking at death is to learn how to live, and to live in a way that is so full, so present, and so infused with love that when the time for that final transition comes, we can meet it not with terror and regret, but with the quiet, dignified peace of a heart that has lived well and loved completely. We have now traveled a great distance on this inner journey. We began in the dark and restless quiet of a 3 o'clock in the morning mind. a mind trapped in a storm of anxiety and worry. From there, we set out on a path of discovery. We learned to anchor ourselves in the simple, life-giving rhythm of the breath. We sat on the banks of our own minds, watching the ceaseless river of thoughts flow by without being swept away. We looked deeply into the nature of reality itself, understanding the universal truths of impermanence, dissatisfaction, and the fluid, process-like nature of the self. We explored the great healing practices of the heart, learning to cultivate loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. We faced our anger, our anxieties, our resentments, and even the great taboo of our own mortality, not with fear, but with a growing sense of mindful, compassionate courage. And so, we must now ask the question, where has this journey led us? What is the fruit of all this inner work? The answer is that we arrive, finally, at the one thing we were searching for all along, a state of profound and unshakable inner peace. But we discover that this peace is not at all what we thought it was. We were searching for it in the wrong place. We thought peace was a destination, a better job, a more peaceful home, a perfect relationship, a life free from problems. We thought it was an external condition we had to achieve. The great discovery of this path is that true peace is not the absence of storms in our life, but the discovery of a quiet, spacious, and indestructible stillness within the storm. It is not an external reality to be found, but an internal quality to be cultivated and uncovered. This profound state of inner peace is not a vague or mystical feeling. It is a stable and resilient state of mind that is built upon two great pillars, like the two wings of a magnificent bird. Both are essential for flight. The first wing is wisdom, or panna. This is the peace that comes from seeing clearly. Through our practice, we have come to understand the nature of reality. By truly internalizing the truth of impermanence, Anika, we begin to relax our desperate, white-knuckled grip on life. We stop demanding that pleasant moments last forever and that unpleasant moments never arise. We learn to flow with the river of change rather than fighting it, and in this surrender, we find a great peace. By understanding the truth of no self, anatta, we are gradually liberated from the exhausting, lifelong burden of defending, promoting, and worrying about a fragile ego. When there is no solid self to protect, we become less defensive, less easily offended, and more open. The slings and arrows of praise and blame can no longer find a fixed target to strike. And by understanding the Four Noble Truths, we stop blaming the world for our suffering. We see that the source of our distress lies not in life's events, but in our own reactive clinging and aversion. This wisdom cuts through the very roots of our discontent, bringing a peace that is born of clarity. The second wing of this great bird is compassion in its broadest sense. This is the peace that comes from a purified heart. As we diligently practice metta, loving kindness, we systematically replace the inner poisons of ill will, resentment, and hatred with the healing balm of unconditional friendliness. We create an inner environment that is warm and welcoming, a mind that is a pleasant place to live. Through the practice of karuna, compassion, we dissolve the illusion of separation and connect with all of life from a place of tender empathy. This connection heals the deep ache of loneliness and alienation. And through the practice of mudita, sympathetic joy, we learn to celebrate the happiness of others, freeing ourselves from the bitter, constricting prison of envy and jealousy. This wing of compassion is the warmth of the heart that melts the ice of our fear and isolation. When the cool, clear light of wisdom is balanced by the radiant warmth of compassion, the mind finds its natural, peaceful, and liberated state. These two wings, wisdom and compassion, are held in perfect balance by a crowning virtue, the fourth and final of the divine abodes. This is the sublime quality of upekkha, or equanimity. If loving kindness is the wish for beings to be happy, compassion is the wish for them to be free from suffering, and sympathetic joy is rejoicing in their happiness, then equanimity is the vast, spacious heart that can hold all of it. The joy and the sorrow, the success and the failure, the beauty and the pain with a steady and unshakable balance. It is crucial to understand that equanimity is not cold indifference or detached apathy. Indifference is a state of not caring, of shutting down the heart. Equanimity is a state of caring deeply, but without being attached to the outcome. It is a profound and loving acceptance of reality as it is. The mind without equanimity is like a leaf blown about by what are called the 8 worldly winds. These are the inevitable ups and downs of life that come in 4 pairs: pleasure and its opposite, pain, gain and its opposite, loss, praise and its opposite, blame, and fame and its opposite, disrepute. The ordinary, untrained mind is completely at the mercy of these winds. We are elated when we experience pleasure, gain, praise, or fame. We are devastated when we experience pain, loss, blame, or disrepute. Our inner peace is constantly being given and taken away by external circumstances over which we have little control. The mind of equanimity, however, is like a deep and mighty mountain. The winds of life still howl around it. The storms of loss and blame still rage. The sunny spells of praise and gain still come, but the mountain itself remains unmoved. It is grounded, stable, and profoundly at peace simply because it is what it is. It does not resist the wind, nor does it cling to the sunshine. It allows all of life's weather to pass through the vast sky of its awareness without being disturbed. This is the peace of Upekkha. It is the quality that prevents our compassion from turning into despair, our loving kindness from turning into grief, and our joy from turning into manic attachment. It is the steady, wise, and all-embracing heart of a loving parent, holding all of life's children in its boundless embrace. There is a beautiful story that perfectly illustrates the nature of this true inner peace. A great king announced a contest to find the artist who could paint the most perfect picture of peace. Artists from all over the land submitted their work. The king looked at all the paintings. There were many beautiful images of serene, crystal-clear lakes, reflecting calm mountains, of quiet, sun-dappled forests, and of gentle, pastel sunsets. They were all lovely, and they were all images of tranquility, but the painting the king chose as the winner was startlingly different. It depicted a huge, roaring waterfall, crashing down with immense power over a jagged cliff face. In the sky above, dark storm clouds gathered, and a bolt of lightning split the air. The painting seemed to be the very image of chaos and turmoil. But the king beckoned everyone closer. He pointed to a small detail in the painting. There, tucked into a tiny crevice in the rock, directly behind the thundering curtain of water, a small mother bird was sitting on her nest. In the midst of the violent storm and the roaring cascade, she was peacefully asleep, her tiny chicks nestled safely beneath her wing. "This," said the king, "is true peace. For peace is not found in a place where there is no noise, no trouble, or no hard work. Peace is to be found in the very midst of all those things, and yet still be calm in your heart. This is the peace that this path offers. We are that mother bird. The roaring waterfall is the unavoidable, impermanent, and often chaotic nature of our lives. The nest is the refuge we have built within ourselves through our practice. It is the unshakable stillness of a mind that has found its home in the present moment, a mind that is imbued with wisdom and wrapped in the warmth of compassion and the profound balance of equanimity. This peace is not something we need to acquire from an outside source. It is not something we need to build from scratch. The journey of this path is ultimately a journey of uncovering what is already there. The seed of awakening, the potential for this profound peace, is the birthright of every living being. Our entire practice or ethics, our mindfulness, our heart cultivation has simply been the patient and diligent work of preparing the soil of our own being, of pulling the weeds of greed, hatred, and ignorance, and of providing the gentle water and sunlight of attention and kindness. The peace we seek is our own true nature, and it has been waiting patiently for us to come home to it all along. Our long journey together is now drawing to a close. We began in the dark, in the quiet desperation of a mind at war with itself, lying awake at 3 a.m, lost in a storm of anxiety. We felt trapped, a prisoner of our own restless thoughts and fears. From that place of suffering, we embarked on a path of discovery, a path that led not outward into the world, but inward, into the very nature of our own heart and mind. We learned, first, to come home to the simple, life-giving anchor of our own breath. From that place of stillness, we found the courage to sit on the banks of the mind's river, watching our thoughts and feelings flow by without being swept away by their currents. We looked deeply into the universal truths of existence, seeing the impermanent, fleeting nature of all things, and understanding how our resistance to this natural flow is the root of our struggle. We learned about the second arrow, and how so much of our most profound suffering is a self-inflicted wound. With this wisdom as our foundation, we began the gentle work of healing the heart. We learned to plant the seeds of loving kindness for ourselves and for all others. We cultivated the tender tremble of compassion and the selfless, radiant light of sympathetic joy. We faced the inner demons of anger and anxiety, not as enemies to be vanquished, but as suffering children to be held with mindful, compassionate care. We learned to forgive, to put down the heavy burden of past hurts, and to find the sacred in the simple, ordinary moments of our daily lives. We even turned and faced the great mystery of our own mortality, not with fear, but with a quiet courage, allowing it to awaken us to the precious, fleeting beauty of this life. And so we arrive here at the end of our journey, and we discover a profound truth. The peace we were so desperately seeking was never in a different set of circumstances. It was not in a quieter world, a better job, or a life free from problems. The entire path was never about changing the world outside, but about transforming the world within. The peace we have found is not the peace of a calm, placid lake with no ripples. It is the peace of the mother bird, resting calmly in her nest behind the roaring waterfall. The waterfall of life will always roar. The storms of loss, sickness, and disappointment will always rage. But we have discovered within ourselves a place of refuge, a deep, unshakable stillness that the chaos of the world cannot touch. The tools are now in your hands. The map has been laid out before you. The path does not end here. In truth, it is only just beginning. It is a path that you walk not by taking grand leaps, but with single, conscious breaths, one after another. It is a practice you undertake not by becoming a perfect meditator on a cushion, but by bringing a little more awareness to the way you drink your morning coffee, a little more kindness to the way you speak to your family, a little more patience when you are stuck in traffic. The stillness you seek is not in some distant, silent future, but in the quiet, spacious gap between two thoughts. The freedom you long for is not found in escaping your life, but in the courage to inhabit this very moment, fully and completely. The journey home is not to a faraway place, but to the simple, ever-present reality of this breath. Begin now.